After half a day, Yi Qingtang ordered everyone from the Yi family to retreat to Falling Sky Valley. The ancient Yu clan had retreated completely because of Ling Yan. They had no choice but to abandon their invasion of this mainland and return to their headquarters. There was only one commander who remained on the southern battlefield to look for little Yu Yun. However, Yi Qingtang also knew that this commander was too powerful. If the group from the Yi family were to remain, they would only sacrifice themselves needlessly. Evening, at sunset. In the glow of the golden rays, Yi Qingtang was holding a gourd of wine and standing in front of a grave marker. Her eyes never left the grave marker in front of her. The words, "The resting place of Hong Heching, a loyal friend," were clearly engraved on the marker. They were just a few simple words, but Yi Qingtang found them particularly jarring. "You're always looking for me to have a drink." Yi Qingtang looked at the grave. "Old man, come out and have a drink with me." There was dead silence all around. The wailing of the wind was her only response. There was no longer anyone to continually bother her. The one who had continually called, Holy Lady, was no longer present. As she looked at the grave marker and the jarring words carved there, Yi Qingtang's lips suddenly arched in a bitter smile. She would never have a response. She suddenly raised the gourd of wine in her hand and poured the sharp liquor down her throat. Scenes from the past surfaced in her mind as the liquor entered her. "Humph, I am the Blood Moon sect elder. Now that I'm here, hadn't you better kneel in submission? Holy Lady, this place is dangerous. Holy Lady, how can you order me to possess a woman? I don't want to be a woman, I. Hong Heching, promise. I will complete my mission." The frank laughter seemed to ring out again and deafen her. But she could only vaguely hear it as it reverberated in her mind. By the time Yi Qingtang left the Blood Moon Elder's grave, a few days had passed. The army of the ancient Yu clan had mostly left. The entire mainland was scarred and battered like a wasteland. At that moment, Yi Qingtang had yet to return to Falling Sky Valley. She was searching everywhere for little Luo Shui and little Yu Yun. 3 days ago, in a ruined city on the southern battlefield, Absolute Monarch of Heaven, Yin Yang Child, and the others suddenly appeared by Yi Qingtang's side. Before the major battle erupted, Yi Qingtang had ordered Absolute Monarch of Heaven, Yin Yang Child, and the rest to investigate the mysterious commander of the ancient Yu clan. Absolute Monarch of Heaven and the others had descended from the void into the ruined city and arrived at Yi Qingtang's side. "Miss Yi," the Absolute Monarch of Heaven said as he looked at Yi Qingtang. "Brother Monarch of Heaven." Yi Qingtang nodded slightly. "Regarding the matter that Miss Yi entrusted to us, we have completed our investigations," Absolute Monarch of Heaven said seriously. "We have looked into the commander's identity, but I'm afraid it's bad news for Miss Yi." "Brother Monarch of Heaven, go ahead and speak frankly," Yi Qingtang said with a frown. "Very well." Absolute Monarch of Heaven nodded. "The commander is the deputy clan master of the ancient Yu clan." Yi Qingtang's face was filled with shock after hearing Absolute Monarch of Heaven's words. She had not imagined that the commander was the deputy clan master of the ancient Yu clan. No wonder even powerful generals like Yu Tong were so awed by this commander. "Miss Yi, the deputy clan master of the ancient Yu clan, currently has 2 children with him, a boy and a girl. They are heading for the mountains in Tianyun. He intends to manipulate the girl to absorb the lives of all living things in this mainland. We can no longer remain in this mainland," a black-robed old man said. Yi Qingtang was shocked. The boy and girl were certainly little Yu Yun and little Luo Shui. But Yi Qingtang had not imagined the deputy clan master of the ancient Yu clan had actually managed to locate the 2 children. "Miss Yi, this mainland is too dangerous. We cannot remain here much longer. We intend to leave now. Will you come with us?" The black-robed old man looked at Yi Qingtang and asked tentatively. "No need." Yi Qingtang shook her head. "I still have some matters to deal with in this mainland. It is best for you to leave." If we are fated to meet again, we will see each other in central mainland. When he heard Yi Qingtang's words, a rarely seen expression of helplessness surfaced on Yin Yang Child's childish face. He said awkwardly, "Elder sister, I hope we will survive to meet again." "Of course we will." Yi Qingtang chuckled as she looked at Yin Yang Child. Everyone knew what Yi Qingtang intended to do, so they did not insist. After a moment, Absolute Monarch of Heaven and the rest had all flown to the end of the void and vanished. When Absolute Monarch of Heaven, Yin Yang Child, and the rest had all gone, Yi Qingtang flew in the direction of Mount Tianyuan. Even if it was the deputy clan master of the ancient Yu clan, she still had to face him. Little Yu Yun must not fall into the hands of the ancient Yu clan. Swoosh! Yi Qingtang's body transformed into a shadow and vanished in the blink of an eye. Half a minute later, at the peak of a mountain range, a white-robed old man was sitting with little Yu Yun and little Luo Shui. At that moment, little Luo Shui was already unconscious, but a faint violet glow had surfaced in little Yu Yun's eyes. She was being controlled by the old man, and her expression was wooden. The old man looked at little Yu Yun and said coldly, "Control the spirit energy in this mainland and transform it all into your energy source." Little Yu Yun's expression was wooden like that of a puppet. She nodded stiffly, and her eyes looked towards the void. The next moment, the spirit energy in this mainland rapidly gathered and slowly started to condense. In this mainland, the power of the spiritual abode was akin to that of a creator god. All the living things could be transformed into spirit energy and turned into part of the spiritual abode. Third Prince of the Eternal Dynasty. I have already ordered the army of the ancient Yu clan to retreat. You certainly would not have foreseen that I would remain here and use the power of the spiritual abode to exterminate all the living things here. The white-robed old man laughed coldly as he looked at the spirit energy that was rapidly gathering in the void. At that moment, a figure suddenly descended from the void. The instant Yi Qingtang rushed down, she reached out her hand to try to snatch little Yu Yun away. You are merely a lowly ant in this inferior mainland. You are not fit to speak to me. Get lost. Go and wait quietly for your death and enjoy your last moments. The white-robed old man impatiently waved her away. However, Yi Qingtang ignored the white-robed old man and looked at little Yu Yun instead. She said gently, "Little Yu Yun, be a good girl and come over to me." Yi Qingtang's voice gradually reached little Yu Yun's ears. Little Yu Yun subconsciously turned to study Yi Qingtang, but she made no other movement. Instead, she continued to stand motionlessly in the same spot. When Yi Qingtang saw little Yu Yun's odd expression, a trace of shock surfaced in her eyes. From little Yu Yun's expression, it was clear that someone was controlling her every move. Clank. She drew her long sword with a crisp ringing sound. Yi Qingtang flicked her wrist and used her long sword to slash at the white-robed old man. When he saw that, the white-robed old man laughed coldly. He sat motionlessly in his spot, letting Yi Qingtang wave her sword at will. The next moment, golden ripples suddenly appeared in front of the white-robed old man. The ripples enclosed the entire area. Boom! Yi Qingtang's sword struck the golden ripples. The ripples did not break. Instead, a huge force forced Yi Qingtang to retreat. Yi Qingtang steadied herself without losing her composure. Her sword arm shook slightly, and a wound had opened in her hand. Bright red blood seeped from her wound. Yi Qingtang lifted her eyes to look at the white-robed old man, and she frowned slightly. The deputy clan master of the ancient Yu clan's heavenly venerate power was much purer than that of Yu Tong and the other generals. Yi Qingtang powers were at the peak of Yin Yang perfected Lord 8th Heaven, and she was no match for him. It was unrealistic to expect to defeat the deputy clan master of the ancient Yu clan. Her only hope was to flee with little Yu Yun, otherwise, all the living things in this mainland would vanish, never to exist again. Boom! A cold light flashed across Yi Qingtang's eyes. She did not retreat at all but waved her right arm. Her long sword continually slashed at the golden ripples. However, every time it struck, a huge repulsive force continually pushed back against Yi Qingtang. You're pretty persistent. A faint smile hung on the white-robed old man's lips. He looked at Yi Qingtang. Considering your abilities, I can kill you in an instant. Do you know why I haven't killed you? Yi Qingtang did not reply but continued to slash at the golden ripples. The white-robed old man laughed coldly. I haven't killed you because you are an ant of an inferior mainland. You are not worthy for me to soil my hands. But it will be interesting to watch you struggle and die. Yi Qingtang gritted her teeth. The palm of her right hand was completely cracked. Heavenly demon devouring. At that moment, Yi Qingtang swiftly called up her heavenly demon devouring power. She used her devouring bloodline to destroy the power within the golden ripples as her long sword slashed at them viciously. There was a huge boom, and the golden ripples were destroyed. At the same time, Yi Qingtang moved with the speed of lightning. She scooped up little Yu Yun and little Luo Shui and swiftly rushed into the void, fleeing as fast as she could. Only then did the white-robed old man snap out of his trance. The white-robed old man had not expected that this girl could actually destroy his shield. Humph, I underestimated you, however, you have successfully provoked me. You must die. The white-robed old man stood up. He raised his right arm. His heavenly venerate power gathered to form a long sword, which immediately pierced the clouds. The golden sword was extremely fast. So fast that it was invisible to the naked eye. Puff! In the void, Yi Qingtang turned pale. A mouthful of hot blood spurted from her mouth. The sword that was formed by the accumulation of heavenly venerate power swiftly pierced Yi Qingtang's right shoulder. Oh, my aim is off. The white-robed old man laughed softly when he saw what had happened. The next instant, he smiled slightly. You won't be so lucky this time. As he spoke, the golden sword appeared again, and this time, it was aimed directly at Yi Qingtang's vitals. Swoosh! A piercing sound could be heard throughout the entire area, causing a strong wind to blow. When she saw that, Yi Qingtang turned pale and immediately took out the mirror of illusions. Buzz! The mirror of illusions turned rapidly. The moment the golden sword was illuminated by the mirror of illusions, it was transformed into a few pieces of wood and fell from the void. Mirror of illusions, when he saw that, the white-robed old man was shocked. This girl actually had a treasure like the mirror of illusions? Ah, based on your abilities, you can only use a treasure like that once. What are you going to do this time? The old man laughed coldly. He quickly raised his right hand, and another golden sword formed from the accumulation of heavenly venerate power appeared. It swiftly struck at Yi Qingtang's vitals. At that moment, Yi Qingtang was standing in the same spot, frowning deeply. The golden long sword was very fast, so fast that she could barely see it clearly, just as the white-robed old man said, as Yi Qingtang cultivation level was that of a yin-yang perfected lord, she could only use a treasure like the mirror of illusions once. She needed to wait a certain period of time before she could use it again. A perilous aura enclosed Yi Qingtang within the span of 2 breaths. The golden sword was mere inches away from her. Yi Qingtang almost reflexively shifted left. Swoosh! With a piercing sound, the golden sword swung past and pierced a mountain peak in the distance. Aha, you're pretty lucky, your natural reflexes saved you. Looks like you've often danced with death. For a girl, that's quite unusual. The white-robed old man laughed softly. Yi Qingtang frowned deeply, then turned, and fled. 1,000 miles away was a valley formed by 2 gorges. If she could just get there, she could vanish from the white-robed old man's line of sight. When she thought of that, Yi Qingtang used all her might and increased her speed to its limit. 800 miles, 500 miles, 200 miles, the gorge in front was just meters away. But at that moment, whiz! A frightening sound pierced the air. Puff! A golden sword swiftly pierced Yi Qingtang's body from behind. Yi Qingtang instantly turned pale. Copious amounts of blood seeped from her mouth, and she fell from the void. But her hands still gripped little Yu Yun and little Luo Shui tightly. At that moment, the little white tiger poked its head out of Yi Qingtang's robes. It smelled the strong scent of blood that lingered. Its snow-white fur was already covered with Yi Qingtang's blood. The little white tiger was shocked to see Yi Qingtang's tightly closed eyes. But before the little white tiger could move, Yi Qingtang opened her eyes again. Her brow was deeply furrowed. She forced down the blood that was rushing up her throat and swiftly passed through the gorge to enter an immense mountain range. Humph! You're about to die, and you're still struggling. The white-robed old man grunted coldly. He stepped through the void in the direction that Yi Qingtang had fled towards. Chapter 12-13 I will take on this tribulation for you. When Yi Qingtang landed on a yellow cliff in the mountain range. She stumbled and gently placed little Luo Shui and little Yu Yun on the ground. The moment she set the children down, she suddenly vomited a large mouthful of blood. The blood that sprayed out immediately stained the ground at her feet red. The little white tiger frantically jumped out of Yi Qingtang's robes. It studied Yi Qingtang carefully, its eyes filled with worry. Before little white tiger could speak, Yi Qingtang used the last of her strength to say, Take them away from this mainland. Fuck, don't talk like that. Well, go together. The little white tiger immediately enlarged itself and prepared to bring Yi Qingtang with it. However, Yi Qingtang shakily retreated. She looked at the little white tiger, and a bitter smile surfaced on her face. She shook her head. No need, it's too late. My meridians and internal organs are all shattered. The power of a heavenly venerate had shattered all her internal organs, and she had lost all her martial cultivation. Yi Qingtang had lasted until now by the sheer strength of her will. Yi Qingtang was aware of her own state. She had no strength to return to the void. She slowly sat on the ground and painfully raised her hand to wipe the traces of blood away from her lips. Ling Yan's image came to her mind unbidden. That jinx. He was right. Or perhaps she had reached the end of this life. Fuck. I said I'm bringing you, so that's it. White tiger bellowed with rage. It tried to pick Yi Qingtang up with its mouth but was unsure of where to grip her. Yi Qingtang's state was such that any movement would only hasten her death. Take them, and go. Yi Qingtang looked at the little white tiger and smiled. Little white one, thank you, for taking care of me all this while. At that moment, the awe-inspiring tiger was at a loss for words. Go quickly, or, it will be too late. Yi Qingtang tried to smile but discovered that she lacked the energy to do so. All right. I know. I'll take them and go. The little white tiger curled its tail and tossed little Luo Shui and little Yu Yun onto its back. It glanced back at Yi Qingtang and then turned to leave. Yi Qingtang finally relaxed when she saw the little white tiger vanish into the distance. Yi Qingtang slowly sat down on a rock and enjoyed her last moments. Her mind was in a whirl. It was as if her life flashed past her in that instant. Her mind slowly started to blur, and her vision vanished. In central mainland, in the Eternal Dynasty. On a snowy mountain top, a green-robed man stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His remote eyes seemed to encompass everything in the universe. Ling Yan, you must not do it. The little azure dragon looked at the green-robed man and said frantically. It had thought that everything would go smoothly after Ling Yan came out of prison, but it had not foreseen that. However, Ling Yan did not respond. A karmic natal chart instantly surfaced. Yi Qingtang's natal chart was at its end. When Yi Qingtang had first obtained the inheritance of the divine phoenix, her natal chart had changed. The heart of the heavenly Tao had been sealed by the divine phoenix, which meant that Yi Qingtang was fated to face a death tribulation. Ling Yan swiftly exchanged his complicated natal chart with Yi Qingtang's natal chart. Ling Yan, are you really doing this for her? Is it worth it? The little azure dragon looked at Ling Yan in shock. Ling Yan, you're actually transferring Yi Qingtang's death tribulation to yourself. If you do that, you will certainly face a death tribulation. You will die, and no one will be able to rescue you. The little azure dragon almost exploded in rage. Miss Ye's death tribulation has already happened. She will certainly die, and no one can save her. I've captured 3 princesses and 2 noble heirs from the Yu clan to no avail, now. Miss Ye's only hope of survival is for me to take on her death tribulation. Ling Yan finally looked at the little azure dragon. His eyes were as peaceful as the sea, and his tone was completely bland, as if life and death were nothing to him. A death tribulation was called so because it was a tribulation in which one inevitably died unless a life was given in exchange for another. Ling Yan had used his karmic power to transfer Yi Qingtang's death tribulation to himself. It was equivalent to exchanging lives with Yi Qingtang. Ling Yan, what are you thinking? The little azure dragon was angry and agitated. What do you mean by this? By transferring Yi Qingtang's death tribulation, she will live, but you must die. Meaning? When he heard that, Ling Yan gave a half-smile. Of course there is meaning behind this. After transferring Miss Ye's death tribulation to myself, it will be some time before the death tribulation begins. However, if I don't transfer it, Miss Yi will die at any moment. So by my reckoning, we have gained much time to live. Fine, you've saved Yi Qingtang, but who is going to save you later? Yi Qingtang has no karmic power and cannot save you. Even a god would be helpless. The little azure dragon raged. In which case, how am I compared to a god? Ling Yan chuckled. I have much time left. Since even a god cannot save me, I shall have to save myself. The little azure dragon was unable to understand him. Ling Yan had always killed decisively without considering the worth of other people's lives. He was utterly cold-blooded. He even considered the entire world to be a chessboard and everyone on it to be pieces on the board. Now, he was even willing to transfer a death tribulation to himself for the sake of a girl. I have never actually encountered a tribulation in which death is inevitable. Don't you think it will be interesting to triumph over a tribulation? Ling Yan's lips curved slightly in a demonic smile. Crazy. Ling Yan, you're really crazy. The little azure dragon sighed and did not say any more. Somewhere in the mainland. Yi Qingtang leaned against a rock. She continually coughed out blood as the figures of heroes who had died in battle surfaced in her mind. It was as if the Blood Moon Elder's frank laughter rang out again. It was as if she had returned to the place where she had first met the Blood Moon Holy Lord. Everything had been so wonderful. Farewell, at least she had not nursed any grievances in this life. Yi Qingtang smiled mysteriously and finally collapsed in a pool of blood. Meanwhile, the white-robed old man had appeared in the mountain range. Roar! The little white tiger sprang wildly at the old man but was not able to hurt him at all. An hour ago, the white-robed old man had blocked the little white tiger's way and snatched little Yu Yun and little Luo Shui away. Considering the power of the ancient Yu clan's deputy clan master, the little white tiger was certainly no match for him. Quiet. The white-robed old man frowned slightly. He waved his arms slightly and a wave of golden ripples closed around the little white tiger. Now, the little white tiger was trapped in the golden ripples and was unable to escape. Aha, no need to panic. How can a great fiend celestial beast like you remain in an inferior mainland like this? I'll bring you to the Yu clan later. As a holy beast of an ancient clan, you will be absolutely venerated. That will be fitting for a fiend celestial beast like you. The white-robed old man chuckled. Chapter 12-15 Rise of the Phoenix 1 Before the little white tiger could respond, all the spirit energy in this mainland became extremely compressed. Is it done? The white-robed old man asked little Yu Yun. When little Yu Yun met the white-robed old man's eyes, her expression immediately grew blank, and she looked wooden and emotionless. Little Yu Yun nodded stiffly under the white-robed old man's gaze. Then hurry up and start. The white-robed old man nodded. At the white-robed old man's words, little Yu Yun lifted her eyes slightly. Her eyes and her exquisite little face seemed to emit a foreboding glow. The bright daylight instantly turned to night. It was as if the day had been swallowed by the night. The bodies of all living things on the mainland simultaneously began to shrink. They transformed into wisps of spirit energy that surged towards little Yu Yun from all directions and poured into her body. In Falling Sky Valley, perfected Xianqian, Daoist Zijin, and the rest vaguely felt that something was wrong with their bodies. But before they could recover their wits, everyone vanished in the blink of an eye, without leaving a trace. It was as if they had never existed in this world. Within a few short hours, millions of living things completely vanished. They were transformed into spirit energy, which poured into the void and was absorbed by little Yu Yun's body. The raucous and prosperous mainland was swiftly transformed into a dead silence. Countless lifeforms transformed into spirit energy and mingled in the pitch-black night. They swarmed in unison towards little Yu Yun. They brought with them an endless vitality that was speedily absorbed. In the vast and boundless place, Yi Qingtang had collapsed in a pool of blood and was quietly lying there. At that point, she had been dead for some time. However, her karmic natal chart was quietly changing. Little by little, a mysterious transformation slowly appeared. Swoosh! Suddenly, a black flame surfaced on Yi Qingtang's body. The endless black flame shot skywards. In the dead silence, it slowly formed a golden phoenix. The instant the golden phoenix formed, the cry of a phoenix suddenly exploded from the divine phoenix. The cry of the phoenix burst forth. The little white tiger heard the cry of the phoenix. In shock, it involuntarily looked and saw in the distance an image of a divine phoenix that was large enough to fill the sky and blot out the sun. Is that the rise of the phoenix, resurrection from the dead? The little white tiger was shaken. The cry of the phoenix continued. Yi Qingtang was already wrapped in roaring flames and received endless vitality from the blazing flames. Amidst the endless darkness, Yi Qingtang vaguely sensed something. Not dead, she slowly regained her consciousness. Boom! In an instant, the hidden iron door in Yi Qingtang's dantian gradually surfaced because of the blazing flames. Thud! The iron door instantly melted with a crash. The terrifying aura of Yin-Yang 10th heaven instantly spread within a radius of a few thousand miles. Yi Qingtang's body slowly rose into the air like a small golden sun, emitting an endless glorious light. At that moment, many abstruse thoughts poured into Yi Qingtang's mind. The primordial qi in her body dissipated, replaced by divine power. The golden glow that surrounded her grew even more blinding. No one could look at her directly. A moment later, the old man looked over in shock. When he saw the golden glow, the white-robed old man looked thoughtfully, and then he vanished on the spot. When the white-robed old man reappeared again, he was at the scene. What's that? The white-robed old man stared at Yi Qingtang, his brow deeply furrowed. He could not see Yi Qingtang's features clearly. In the void, all that was visible to the naked eye was flames. The white-robed old man was not even sure where the flames had come from or what they symbolized. Swoosh! The white-robed old man gathered his heavenly venerate power to form a golden long sword. With a slight sweep of his right arm, the long sword slashed at the golden flames with the speed of lightning. But as the white-robed old man looked on in astonishment, when the golden sword slashed at the flames, it was like water sinking into dirt. It did not even create a ripple. What on earth is that? The white-robed old man looked perplexed and bewildered. Boom! After a moment, an explosion rang out and spread through a radius of 100 miles. The golden flames that looked like a small sun finally dissipated. An aloof-looking girl floated in the void. She was filled with a divine glow, making it seem as if a real god had appeared. The girl floating in the void was Yi Qingtang, who was supposed to be dead. The white-robed old man's eyes filled with disbelief when he saw Yi Qingtang standing unharmed before him. He had clearly thrust the long sword formed from his heavenly venerate power through Yi Qingtang. He had even destroyed all her internal organs. She was almost certainly doomed. Even Yi Qingtang was completely taken aback, not to mention the white-robed old man. When Yi Qingtang saw her unharmed body, her expression was filled with shock. She clearly remembered that she had died. But somehow, the remaining divine phoenix bloodline in her body caused her to undergo the rise of the phoenix and be reborn from the ashes. Besides that, her shattered organs were completely restored after her rebirth. Even the iron door in her dantian leading to the 10th heaven of Yin-Yang perfected Lord, which had never appeared before, had been shattered by the flames. This allowed Yi Qingtang to comprehend many mysteries and enter the 10th heaven of Yin-Yang perfected Lord. Aha, and from an inferior mainland, I have underestimated you. At that moment, the white-robed old man looked at Yi Qingtang, who was in the void. His lips curved upwards slightly, arching in a bone-chilling smile. Although this was somewhat surprising, it was of no consequence. Swoosh! The white-robed old man's eyes instantly sharpened. A few golden long swords formed and slashed at Yi Qingtang together. But Yi Qingtang now had no fear of the golden long swords formed from the accumulation of the white-robed old man's heavenly venerate power. At that moment, Yi Qingtang raised her right arm slightly. From her position in the void, she gently reached out with her finger. To the white-robed old man's disbelief, the long sword he formed from his heavenly venerate power instantly exploded before his eyes. At that moment, an invisible screen enclosed Yi Qingtang and the white-robed old man. The space within the screen was filled with an immense and terrifying aura of the Great Tao. Realm of the Great Tao, impossible. The golden-robed old man was in a state of disbelief. Only powerful cultivators who had entered the realm of heavenly venerate could hope to comprehend even a little of the realm of the Great Tao. In this world, there were very few who could comprehend the realm of the Great Tao. Even in the ancient Yu clan, only one person had understood the rules of the Great Tao and had hence created the realm of the Great Tao. This girl standing before him was a mere Yin-Yang perfected Lord. How could she comprehend the realm of the Great Tao? Chapter 12-17 Rise of the Phoenix 3 Yin-Yang perfected Lord. 10th Heaven. The white-robed old man suddenly sensed the aura from Yi Qingtang's body. His heart quaked in disbelief. There was a 10th heaven of Yin-Yang perfected Lord in this world. However, the 9th and 10th heavens of Yin-Yang perfected Lord had already become the stuff of legends. Based on unofficial historical records, the 10th heaven of Yin-Yang perfected Lord was a mark of divinity given to mankind by the true gods when the world was first created. Any cultivator who managed to become a Yin-Yang perfected Lord 10th heaven had hope of becoming a true god. In addition, at the initial state, their primordial qi would be transformed into divine energy. However, at some point, the power of Yin-Yang perfected Lord 10th heaven had been taken away by the true gods, ending mankind's dream of becoming true gods. A picture depicting this had surfaced in Yi Qingtang's mind. Many eras ago, there had been a major battle between the gods and the demons. The universe was shattered, and mankind betrayed the true gods. This scene flashed past Yi Qingtang's mind so quickly that she could not fully comprehend it. Yi Qingtang vaguely understood that in the past, the 10th heaven of Yin-Yang perfected Lord was not a lost realm. It was possible for any cultivator to enter the 10th heaven. But at some point, the 9th and 10th heavens had disappeared and been sealed within a mysterious iron door. It was extremely difficult for a cultivator to find the iron door, open it, and enter it. Is this the 10th heaven of Yin-Yang perfected Lord? At that moment, Yi Qingtang was standing in the void. The moment she thought of it, a yin-yang image appeared behind her. It seemed to supersede the sun and moon as it emitted a solemn and ancient air. Looks like you've had a miraculous encounter, the white-robed old man stared at Yi Qingtang and said thoughtfully. someone who was clearly doomed had mysteriously survived. Further, her martial powers had swiftly reached the 10th heaven of Yin-Yang Perfected Lord when they had only been at the peak of Yin-Yang Perfected Lord 8th heaven previously. The white-robed old man was certain that Yi Qingtang had some miraculous encounter. However, even though she was at the 10th heaven of Yin-Yang Perfected Lord and had comprehended the realm of the Great Tao, the white-robed old man was still not afraid. And from an inferior mainland, no matter what, you are only a Yin-Yang Perfected Lord. In my eyes, that is nothing. At that moment, the white-robed old man glared at Yi Qingtang, who was in the void, and laughed coldly. When she heard that, Yi Qingtang was silent for a moment. Her aloof gaze fell on the white-robed old man. If we were in central mainland, you could indeed easily crush a Yin-Yang Perfected Lord 10th heaven to death like an ant, since you are in the heavenly venerate realm. A pity that on this mainland, you merely have the power of a venerate and not a heavenly venerate. It's all the same, if I can kill you once, then I can certainly kill you a second time. The white-robed old man laughed coldly. He rose swiftly into the air and drew closer to Yi Qingtang. My rules are that you are not allowed to fly. Yi Qingtang said blandly. As Yi Qingtang finished speaking, the white-robed old man who had just started flying suddenly lost his balance. He fell heavily to the ground with a loud crash. What? The white-robed old man within the invisible screen was shocked. The white-robed old man was somewhat familiar with the realm of the Great Tao. But to attain the realm of the Great Tao so that one could freely change the rules of a world as Yi Qingtang did was rare. Every powerful cultivator comprehended the realm of the Great Tao differently. Some attained a realm that allowed them to alter rules like Yi Qingtang, while others might be able to transform demons. Some extremely talented cultivators even comprehended the realm in such a way that allowed them to temporarily transform into a true god. Within that realm, they had no fear of even emperor-level figures. Let's see how powerful your realm of the Great Tao is. A cold light flickered in the white-robed old man's eyes. He raised his right arm slightly, and an earth-grade divine weapon slowly appeared in his hand. Yi Qingtang was expressionless as she looked at the divine weapon in the white-robed old man's hand. Earth-grade could be considered to be a true divine weapon. Even though she was currently a Yin-Yang Perfected Lord 10th heaven, she would be hard-pressed to withstand the might of an earth-level divine weapon. However, Yi Qingtang suddenly said blandly, "There are no weapons in my realm." As Yi Qingtang spoke, the earth-level divine weapon in the white-robed old man's hand instantly vanished. My divine weapon, the white-robed old man stared at his empty hand in shock. You have a death wish. The white-robed old man was enraged, and the power of a heavenly venerate surged through his body. The instant the white-robed old man's heavenly venerate power surged, Yi Qingtang spoke again. In my realm, the power of a heavenly venerate is not permitted to exist. The moment she spoke, the power of the heavenly venerate throughout the white-robed old man's body completely vanished. The old man sank into silence. Yi Qingtang's realm of the Great Tao was just too mysterious and difficult to deal with. Now that little Yu Yun had completed her mission, all he had to do was leave with her. There was no need for him to remain and fight Yi Qingtang to the death. At that thought, the white-robed old man's body instantly vanished on the spot. He swiftly fled the area within the screen. The moment he left the screen, the white-robed old man's earth-level divine weapon and heavenly venerate power all rapidly returned. Only the area within the screen was part of Yi Qingtang's realm. The moment he left the area, the realm lost its effect. The white-robed man grabbed little Yu Yun and little Luo Shui. He tore a fistful of talismans and vanished on the spot. Teleport talisman, Yi Qingtang frowned slightly as she muttered to herself. This type of teleport talisman was the work of a master of space transfer and allowed one to bridge space. At that moment, the white-robed old man had probably left this mainland. Yi Qingtang descended next to the little white tiger, who was trapped by heavenly venerate power. She waved her right arm slightly and dispersed the heavenly venerate power so that the little white tiger was free again. The little white tiger instantly fell into Yi Qingtang's embrace. It was surprised and delighted to see Yi Qingtang alive again. "Fuck, I thought you were doomed. Who knew you were so lucky?" Yi Qingtang did not respond to the little white tiger's surprised exclamations. Her gaze was distant. Could nothing be done to change this? Before the little white tiger could speak again, Yi Qingtang leaped up and took flight. Falling Sky Valley, which was previously a boisterous valley, was now dead silent. Fresh footprints could vaguely be seen in the pristine public square. The muddled footprints seemed to speak of how this place was bustling just a moment before. But now, all that remained was empty space. Yi Qingtang stood in Falling Sky Valley and looked at the emptiness before her. Not a sound could be heard in the huge valley. In the past, all birdsong would have vanished by night, leaving only the sound of the wind and the rustling of grass. Chapter 12-19 Never Give Up 2, You, the little white tiger nestled in Yi Qingtang's arms and looked at the desolation before it. It subconsciously tried to say something. But before it could finish speaking, Yi Qingtang had turned and left swiftly with it in tow. The Yi house in Lin Town was completely silent. All the furniture was in its original position in the empty hall but covered with dust. Yi Qingtang carried the little white tiger and slowly walked through the Yi house. She looked through her father's study, her own room, and the previously bustling martial arts arena. "Eldest young lady," an almost inaudible voice reverberated through Yi Qingtang's mind. She subconsciously turned and vaguely seemed to see the Yi family youths gathered together, their youthful and vigorous smiling faces before her. But when Yi Qingtang looked closely, all she could see was emptiness. Everyone had vanished. The ancient Yu clan's plan had succeeded. Even though they had fought with everything they had, they were unable to avert this disaster. Yi Qingtang and the little white tiger were the only two living things left in this mainland. Everything in this world had completely vanished. The little white tiger was in Yi Qingtang's arms. It hesitated to speak, but it suddenly sensed Yi Qingtang's arms around it tighten. Warm moisture soaked the fur on its head. Little white tiger raised its head involuntarily and suddenly saw that at some point, 2 lines of tears had begun running down Yi Qingtang's exquisite face. The tears fell noiselessly and sank into little white tiger's smooth fur. This soundless sobbing caused the little white tiger's heart to quiver. In the end, "I could not stop this," Yi Qingtang felt everything before her blur. She raised her head and tried to see more clearly, but her vision became increasingly blurred. She was prepared to give her life to defend this mainland. However, in the end, she survived, but this mainland was completely destroyed. Having lost its living things, this mainland would slowly become desolate as time went by. Yi Qingtang had left this mainland in her previous life and was unaware of this calamity. In this life, she was present but was helpless to stop it. Hot tears fell. The little white tiger clearly sensed the warmth of her tears. It panicked a little as it looked at Yi Qingtang. It had never seen her with this kind of expression before. The little white tiger shook its whiskers and suddenly said, "Don't cry, although this is the worst possible outcome, you can still find little Yu Yun and release all the spiritual energy she absorbed." Yi Qingtang's gaze immediately turned to the little white tiger when it spoke. The little white tiger continued. Everyone on this mainland was absorbed by little Yu Yun. Logically speaking, if little Yu Yun releases their souls, then they will revive, so the situation may not be hopeless. Yi Qingtang's eyes brightened a little. She said thoughtfully, "Would Hong Heqing and the others be resurrected?" "Well, they died in battle previously, and had nothing to do with little Yu Yun. It's hard to tell if they will be resurrected." The little white tiger shook its head. "But you, how did you come back to life?" The little white tiger quickly asked Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang was unsure of how to answer this question. She herself was not sure how she had returned to life, so she was naturally unable to answer the little white tiger. She thought that she was left only with despair. However, the little white tiger's words had given Yi Qingtang a glimmer of hope. If she could just find little Yu Yun, she could release all the living things in this mainland. And then, everyone would return. At that thought, Yi Qingtang suddenly raised her hand and wiped away her tears. She raised the little white tiger and kissed its head. "You, woman, what are you doing?" The little white tiger was so shocked by this sudden kiss that its fur stood on end. But it glimpsed Yi Qingtang's slight smile from the corner of its eye and slowly stopped worrying. This damn woman looks so pretty. Weeping and wailing do not suit her in the least. "Thank you." Yi Qingtang looked smilingly at the little white tiger. "Don't thank me. You'll have to depend on your own ability to find little Yu Yun. You've seen the white-robed old man's power. It won't be easy to snatch little Yu Yun from the hands of the ancient Yu clan." The little white tiger grunted as it lifted its front claw and kneaded the part of its head that Yi Qingtang had kissed. "Even if it's a chance in a million, I will not give up." Yi Qingtang took a deep breath and looked at the blue horizon. "Let's go to Central Mainland." Yi Qingtang and the little white tiger swiftly plunged into the clouds and vanished. Everyone must be sure to wait for her. In Central Mainland, on the peak of a tall mountain, Ling Yan was standing at the edge of a cliff with his hands clasped behind his back. He looked at the layers of clouds and Yi Qingtang's karmic natal chart. As he watched the karmic natal chart transform and take on a new pattern, his lips curved in a slight smile. The little azure dragon was standing next to Ling Yan. It showed no joy as it looked at the smile on Ling Yan's lips. "Is it really worth it?" Ling Yan smiled and removed the karmic natal chart with a wave of his hand. "Yes." The little azure dragon sighed. Now that matters had reached this stage, whatever it said was futile. Yi Qingtang's death tribulation had disappeared, but it had been shifted to Ling Yan. Before the little azure dragon could speak, Ling Yan turned and walked down the mountain. "Where are you going?" asked the little azure dragon. Ling Yan's footsteps paused. He spoke laughingly without turning his head. "Miss Yi will be arriving in Central Mainland soon." The little azure dragon was silent. It felt that Ling Yan's actions were always unexpected when they had anything to do with Yi Qingtang. "So what?" The little azure dragon could not help but mutter. "Nothing much. I'm just looking forward to it." Ling Yan spoke laughingly. As he finished speaking, he raised his eyes slightly towards the endless horizon. Perhaps they would meet again very soon. Was that not so? The days passed. In prosperous Central Mainland, the grass grew luxuriantly, and birds and beasts gathered in the thick forests. One large and one small figure quietly appeared at the entrance of a gorge. "Fuck, the spirit energy in this second largest mainland is really abundant." The little white tiger was following Yi Qingtang. An excited glow flickered in its eyes as it stepped on the springy grass. Yi Qingtang had brought it to Central Mainland 2 days ago. The little white tiger had never been to this mainland before. Now that it was here for the first time, it was truly excited by the air that was saturated with abundant spirit energy. Chapter 12:21 Central Mainland 1 equals Compared to the little white tiger's excitement, Yi Qingtang was indifferent towards the abundant spirit energy in Central Mainland. When she had first come to Central Mainland in her previous life, she had also been taken aback by the abundant spirit energy here. The power of the Central Mainland did not solely depend on its advanced martial culture but was also due to the abundant spirit energy that provided a conducive environment for cultivation. Speaking of which, where are we? The little white tiger looked around the gorge. It did not know whether it was mistaken, but it sensed that Yi Qingtang was fairly familiar with Central Mainland. The moment she stepped into Central Mainland, Yi Qingtang seemed to know where she was going. "Gorge of the Dead," Yi Qingtang said blandly. "How do you know?" The little white tiger asked curiously. But before Yi Qingtang could respond, a clamor suddenly arose from afar. She almost subconsciously caught the little white tiger and hid behind a huge rock with a flying leap. No matter what that noise was, Yi Qingtang was not interested. Just as Yi Qingtang and the little white tiger hid behind the huge rock, several figures a short distance away suddenly flew towards them. One figure was a thin man with a goatee. He was running swiftly, but before he could advance a few miles, several wisps of gray fog suddenly flew towards him from behind and blasted the grass in front of him. A huge pit immediately formed in front of the man, cutting him off. Several black figures suddenly appeared in front of him. Yi Qingtang and the little white tiger, who were hiding behind the huge rock, saw the black figures clearly. They seemed semi-human. Each was wearing a black cape, but beneath the cape, their bodies were not human but white skeletons. The undead clan. Yi Qingtang could not help but frown when she saw the skeletons in black capes. The undead clan was one of the alien races in Central Mainland. When Yi Qingtang was in Central Mainland previously, she had heard rumors about the undead clan. Legend had it that the undead clan was not native to Central Mainland but had arrived more than 10,000 years ago. They were violent by nature and loved to kill. They had terrorized Central Mainland thousands of years ago. But a few thousand years ago, the might of the undead clan had waned, giving the people in Central Mainland some respite. Further, the most powerful force within the undead clan was the Temple of Shadows that controlled the entire undead clan. Yi Qingtang's gaze swept across the capes of the undead. She suddenly saw that their capes were embroidered with the symbol of the Temple of Shadows. Yi Qingtang had not expected to encounter undeads from the Temple of Shadows. One must know that in Central Mainland, the Temple of Shadows was everyone's nightmare. Although it had sunk into obscurity nearly 1,000 years ago, their terror had continued to linger. If they discovered her and the little white tiger, they would probably die there. Just as Yi Qingtang was secretly observing this, an undead berated the man with the goatee. "Human, how dare you steal the treasure of the Temple of Shadows? If you wish to live, you must hand over the 9 Souls ring." Chapter 12:22 Central Mainland 2. The stiff, vague voice sounded very eerie. The man with the goatee turned pale. He had not expected his theft to be discovered. Now that the undead clan had its eye on him, he would probably die. He tried to flee without saying another word, but the undead rushed towards him, and they began to fight in midair. When she saw that they were engaged in a fight, Yi Qingtang prepared to seize the opportunity to leave the area. However, at that moment, the man with the goatee was sent flying by the skeletons. He crashed forcefully into the huge rock where Yi Qingtang was hiding. Boom! The huge rock shattered. Yi Qingtang and the little white tiger, who were hiding behind it, were immediately exposed to the undead clan. Yi Qingtang was speechless. This was embarrassing. The undead had not expected anyone else to be there, and they were also taken aback. The man with the goatee turned to look at Yi Qingtang. He raised his right hand and stuffed a bundle into Yi Qingtang's hand. He said in a panic, "I can't escape. Quick, take the 9 Souls ring and leave. I'll delay these undead clan people." With that, the man with the goatee prepared to fight the undead clan to the death. Anyone who saw this scene would assume that Yi Qingtang was an accomplice of the man and had come to support him. "Fuck, this guy is trying to get us into trouble." The little white tiger glared and scolded him. The man with the goatee clearly had no other choice and was trying to frame them. From what the undead had said earlier, they knew that this man had stolen the 9 Souls ring. But now, this bastard had given the 9 Souls ring to Yi Qingtang in the presence of these undead clan people. He was probably going to try to seize the opportunity to flee. Even if Yi Qingtang threw the bundle back to the man with the goatee, the undead would assume that she was in cahoots with him. "Just come for me. We're definitely not returning the 9 Souls ring to you," the man with the goatee said to the stunned undead with dignity. He looked poised to protect his companions so that they could flee. At that moment, Yi Qingtang wanted to kill him. She had met shameless people before but not someone as shameless as him. However, since matters had already reached this stage, she had certainly become involved. Yi Qingtang had no choice but to prepare for a fight. However, the undead did not seem to have any intention of attacking. The hollow eye holes in their skulls stared straight at Yi Qingtang until she broke out in goosebumps. Their bones clattered at each other from time to time, as if they were discussing something. The man with the goatee thought that after he threw the object to the girl who had suddenly appeared, the undead would rush forward and try to snatch the Nine Souls ring from her. Then, he could seize the opportunity to sneak away. But it turned out that, for some reason, these undead were not moving. After a while, the atmosphere grew strange. Maybe these skeletons are brainless and can't understand what's going on. Shall we go? The little white tiger suggested softly. Yi Qingtang naturally did not wish to linger. While the undead were in a state of shock, she turned with the intention of leaving. But the moment Yi Qingtang turned, the undead suddenly moved. With a flying leap, they landed neatly in front of Yi Qingtang. Chapter 12:23 Central Mainland 3 Yi Qingtang subconsciously reached for her sword, but when it was still half drawn, the undead standing before her suddenly bent their knees and simultaneously kneeled before her. Yi Qingtang stared blankly. Do the undead perform this ritual before killing someone? The little white tiger was rather stunned. Were they polite, or just perverted? But just as Yi Qingtang and the little white tiger were feeling bewildered, the undead suddenly raised their heads and opened their skeletal mouths. Distorted voices suddenly issued from their mouths. Holy Lord! You have finally returned. Their voices even had a sobbing note. Yi Qingtang was speechless. Holy Lord? What the hell? Holy Lord, you've been gone for so long. We thought you were tired of us, Holy Lord, please don't leave us again. Come back with us. The undead who had seemed so terrifying previously now raised their voices and wailed. If not for the characteristics of their race, they would probably be weeping. Holy Lord, everyone misses you very much. We even carry your picture with us so that we can pay our respects to you every day. When an undead saw that the Holy Lord before them still did not reply, it decided to show its sincerity by taking a worn-out scroll from its robes and opening it before Yi Qingtang. A stunningly beautiful girl was drawn on the paper. And she looked just like Yi Qingtang. Understanding finally dawned on Yi Qingtang. When she came to Central Mainland in her previous life, she had heard a rumor about the Temple of Shadows. Rumor had it that the Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows was incomparably powerful. She had led the undead clan in this mainland to the height of their power. But a few thousand years ago, this Holy Lord had mysteriously vanished. Since then, the powerful Temple of Shadows had declined, and the undead in the entire mainland had lost their power. No one knew why the Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows had vanished. In the legends, many rumors surrounded this disappearance. Some said that the Holy Lord had gone missing while others said that she had gone into seclusion to cultivate. Now, it looked like the Holy Lord had gone missing. As she looked just like the Holy Lord, the undead had taken her for their long-lost Holy Lord. At that moment, Yi Qingtang finally understood the situation. She also realized that she was in no position to deny the status of the Holy Lord. The undead she was facing were so powerful that she certainly could not resist them. If she denied that she was the Holy Lord, it would probably enrage these undead. At that point, Yi Qingtang took a deep breath, put on an aloof look, and looked at the undead. I have returned. The undead were so moved by their Holy Lord's reply that they trembled until their skeletons creaked. The man with the goatee who had planned everything was completely taken aback. He had planned to lure the undead away so that he could escape but had not expected that. This girl was the legendary long-lost Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows. The man with the goatee instantly turned pale. He had truly made a grave mistake. The man with the goatee almost subconsciously turned to flee. Chapter 12 24 Temple of Shadows 1 Fuck, are you still trying to flee? The little white tiger immediately noticed the man with the goatee's movement and let out a roar. Yi Qingtang immediately issued orders to the undead. Capture him. Yes. The undead immediately followed orders and flew towards the man with the goatee, who was trying to flee. Before he got more than a few meters away, the undead had caught him by the ankles and dragged him upside down to Yi Qingtang. Holy Lord. Yi Qingtang nodded slightly. After personally witnessing the power of the undead, this was the first time she was thankful for her looks. If not for her looks, she would probably be in the same position as the man with the goatee. Ha! Holy Lord. I have long heard of you. My respect for you is unending. I am truly fortunate to see your glory today. The man with the goatee, who was being held upside down, calmly plied Yi Qingtang with extravagant compliments. Oh. Yi Qingtang raised her brows slightly. This fellow was really good at changing sides. In that case, why don't you hand the 9 souls ring over? Yi Qingtang suddenly said with a smile. Since she was playing the role of the Temple of Shadows Holy Lord, she might as well do it thoroughly. At Yi Qingtang's words, an undead suddenly jogged forward a few steps and picked up the bundle that the man with the goatee had given to Yi Qingtang, which she had thrown on the ground. It respectfully brought it to Yi Qingtang. Although it had a skull, for some reason, Yi Qingtang felt that this undead was looking to take the credit. Holy Lord, the 9 souls ring, said the undead. Yi Qingtang swept a glance at the bundle, then glanced at the undead who was looking for credit. She did not know what to say. The 9 souls ring is not in the bundle, Yi Qingtang said helplessly. The undead was taken aback and immediately opened the bundle. As he watched the undead open the bundle, the man with the goatee covered his eyes in despair. As expected, the bundle was filled with rags and gravel. Only then did the undead realize that it had been tricked by the man with the goatee. It angrily tossed the things aside, and its skeletal hand reached out to choke the man with the goatee. Don't act rashly before the Holy Lord. Another undead immediately shouted. The first undead then realized in alarm that it had gone too far. It kneeled before Yi Qingtang in terror and said, I have offended the Holy Lord in my ignorance. I deserve to die. Please, Holy Lord, punish me with the destruction technique. As their name showed, the undead could live forever. The destruction technique was one of the Dharma spells that could kill the undead. It was pleading to be eternally destroyed just because of a moment of carelessness. Yi Qingtang could not help but feel ashamed in the face of the undead's worshipful attitude towards the Holy Lord. The more they venerated her, the more she was afraid to reveal her true status. If they discovered that she was a fake, they would probably sentence her to death for blaspheming their Holy Lord. Heaven knew that the undead were famous in this mainland for their methods of torture. Yi Qingtang was secretly shocked but did not allow it to show. Instead, she maintained her aloof appearance. Forget it. I declare you innocent. The Holy Lord is merciful. I am filled with gratitude. The undead kowtowed 3 times to Yi Qingtang. Chapter 12 25 Temple of Shadows 2 Yi Qingtang did not know what to say. However, her gaze quickly shifted to the man with the goatee. The 9 souls ring is still on his person. The undead immediately looked at the man with the goatee. Their empty eye sockets seemed to be filled with the intention to kill. Despicable human, how dare you make a fool of us? Kill him. Flay him and we will certainly find the 9 souls ring. The man with the goatee suddenly had a bright idea. He hurriedly smiled at Yi Qingtang and said, Great Holy Lord, I would never dare to make fools of the esteemed undead clan. I am merely a great admirer of yours. I only wanted to look reverently upon the 9 souls rings that you wore. Since I have seen your esteemed self now, I am content. I will certainly return the 9 souls ring with all due respect. As he spoke, the man with the goatee unhurriedly took an exquisite bangle from his robes. The bangle was exquisite, but she could not tell what material it was made of. It was snow-white and beautiful, but eerie carvings could faintly be seen on its surface. An undead took the 9 souls ring and offered it to Yi Qingtang with both hands. Yi Qingtang took the 9 souls ring and realized that the undead were staring at her, as if expecting her to put it on. Yi Qingtang did not wish to create more trouble, so she simply put the 9 souls ring on. Strangely, the 9 souls ring vanished the moment she put it on. She involuntarily reached out to touch her wrist and felt the shape of the 9 souls ring. But when she looked at it, she could not see any trace of it. Was this thing invisible? Yi Qingtang was pleased. Legend had it that the Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows was incomparably powerful. She could even single-handedly take on 100 powerful cultivators from the second domain. Naturally, the Holy Lord's Dharma treasure would be extraordinary. Had she not been forced to acquire a treasure by chance? Holy Lord, how should we deal with this person? When the undead looked at the 9 souls ring that had vanished on Yi Qingtang's wrist, their tone became even more agitated. Yi Qingtang did not understand why they had suddenly become so agitated. She swept a glance at the man with the goatee. Bring him back. Was this fellow still planning to resist? How his fortunes had changed. The man with the goatee looked despaired. The undead naturally followed Yi Qingtang's orders. Holy Lord, since you have returned, why don't you return to the Holy Temple with us? Everyone is waiting for you. I still have some matters to deal with, Yi Qingtang said blandly. Return to the Temple of Shadows with them? What a joke. Who knew whether her true status would be exposed there? However, when the undead looked as though they had been struck by lightning when they heard Yi Qingtang's words. Holy Lord, please come back with us. The Temple of Shadows cannot do without you, Holy Lord. If you don't return with us, we will follow you. The Temple of Shadows cannot lose you again. The undead pleaded pitifully. They kneeled in front of Yi Qingtang and repeated kowtowed as they begged. Yi Qingtang saw that if she did not return with them, they would insist on following her. They might even send word back to the Temple of Shadows. Then, who knew how many undead would flock over and cause more trouble? Yi Qingtang had intended to increase her personal abilities during this trip to Central Mainland so that she could regain Little Yuyun. She would also take the opportunity to search for news of her mother. If she became entangled with a group of undead from the Temple of Shadows, she would not be able to go anywhere. Chapter 12:26 Temple of Shadows 3 Yi Qingtang had no choice but to nod and say, all right then, I'll go back with you and take a look. If worse came to worst, she would just guard her words and tread carefully. Once Yi Qingtang gave her word, the undead clambered up joyfully. They brought Yi Qingtang and the little white tiger back to the Temple of Shadows. The man with the goatee was also dragged along with them. The former Temple of Shadows was the highlight of Central Mainland. It was the glory of the undead clan. However, with the disappearance of the Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows, the temple's power in Central Mainland had collapsed. The glory of the undead clan had also vanished with it. Yi Qingtang had heard many legends about the undead when she visited Central Mainland in her previous life. They were cruel, bloodthirsty, and capricious. They cultivated special dharma spells that made them very difficult to deal with. Central Mainland's academies had classes that specialized in dealing with the undead. However, in her previous life, Yi Qingtang had been busy with her own affairs and did not know much about the undead clan. She had occasionally seen the undead but had not paid much attention to them. Now, she was going to Temple of Shadows, the pride of the undead clan. The Temple of Shadows had declined for the past 1,000 years. They walked through the Valley of the Dead, passed through the waterfall of the deceased, and trod through the swamp of death. The ancient and mysterious temple stood between two cliffs, built against the wall of the cliff. Before they even stepped into the Temple of Shadows, they could already sense the aura of death that saturated the surroundings. Layers of gray fog shrouded the temple, as if hiding it from the daylight. Even the sunlight was unable to completely pierce through the fog. Although it was day, the surroundings of the Temple of Shadows were as dim as if it was evening. A gigantic skeleton was embedded in the Temple of Shadows. Only the upper half of the skeleton remained, but it was more than 100 meters tall. Its hands were crossed over its chest as if it was silently guarding the land of the undead. Yi Qingtang was carrying the little white tiger in her arms. It looked at the Temple of Shadows as the aura of death lingered in its nostrils, bringing with it a chill. Dozens of skeleton soldiers wearing light armor and carrying long spears stood at the entrance to the Temple of Shadows. In the coiling gray fog, the place looked like a dark cemetery or hell. When the skeleton soldiers heard the sound of footsteps, they turned to look. Their skulls and throat bones rattled together to emit a clattering noise. When the skeleton soldiers saw the undead, they bowed. "Go quickly and inform the guardians and elders that the Holy Lord has returned," an undead said proudly. When the skeleton soldiers heard that, they immediately raised their eyes and looked at Yi Qingtang, who was standing in the middle. They suddenly opened their mouths wide. Their teeth clattered continually as they emitted excited sounds. The noise sounded like eerie knocking that spread into the dark temple wildfire. The noise continued to spread through the deepest parts of the temple. It was as if countless skeletons had received the news and were spreading it by some special method. This was the first time Yi Qingtang had seen the undead use this method to transmit information, and she was intrigued. The next second, an eerie wind suddenly blew from within the pitch-black temple. A black fog came coiling out with the wind and suddenly came to a halt in front of Yi Qingtang. The black fog slowly dissipated, and 5 figures suddenly appeared. Before Yi Qingtang could see the 5 figures clearly, 5 undead fell to their knees and chorused reverently, "We respectfully welcome the Holy Lord back to the temple." Chapter 12:27 Holy Sun 1 At that moment, 5 completely different undead were kneeling before Yi Qingtang. Some were pure skeletons while others were part flesh and part bones like the remains of a body. Some even looked like normal humans. However, all of them carried the faint scent of death. "Holy Lord, you have finally returned." A skeleton in a long golden robe spoke with a quavering voice. It raised its head and fixed its dark eye sockets on Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang had no idea who these 5 undead were. So, she assumed a calm demeanor and nodded. "Rise, all of you." The 5 undead got to their feet. Among them was one that looked like a youth. It raised its hands to wipe the unprecedented traces of tears from the corner of its eyes. "Holy Lord, we have waited for you for many years. Please return to the temple," several undead said respectfully. Yi Qingtang raised her eyes and looked at the pitch-black temple. She sighed inwardly and walked in. The moment Yi Qingtang entered, eerie green lights suddenly sprang up along the walls on both sides, lighting up the previously pitch-dark temple. She saw at a glance that the huge temple was held up by 36 black bone pillars. Each bone pillar was crisscrossed with numerous black snake bones. Right at the end of the main hall was a bone throne made of black gold. It suddenly appeared in front of Yi Qingtang. "Holy Lord, please take your seat." In the main hall, many undead turned their empty eye sockets towards Yi Qingtang. Although they had no eyeballs, their expectancy and urgency were apparent. Under the scrutiny of the numerous undead, Yi Qingtang had no choice but to steel herself and step onto the throne of black bone. As Yi Qingtang took her seat, all the undead in the main hall clattered their lower jaws. Their teeth made a crisp clacking noise that filled the entire hall. The scent of death swiftly spread through the hall. The little white tiger crouched on Yi Qingtang's knee. At this sight, it secretly used its claws to grip Yi Qingtang's knees. "No matter what happens, you must remain calm." There were so many undead that just the sight of them was frightening. If Yi Qingtang's true status was exposed, they would never escape. Yi Qingtang nodded silently. However, before Yi Qingtang could recover her wits, a black shadow emerged from the side of the temple and rushed forward, bringing with it the strong scent of blood. This black shadow was extremely fast. Before Yi Qingtang and the little white tiger could ascertain what it was, the black shadow had burrowed into Yi Qingtang's arms, sending the little white tiger, which had been crouching on Yi Qingtang's knee, flying. Ah Yao! You have finally returned. A soft voice with a trace of tears came from the black shadow. Yi Qingtang finally saw what had burrowed into her arms. It was a dainty little child, standing only as high as her knee. He had an exquisite little face, and his pale and flawless skin had a hint of gray. His large black eyes had no white. They were hollow and black, like a cat that had widened its eyes. Although he looked eerie, he was also adorable. However, the child's clothes seemed to be soaked in blood. Fresh blood dripped from his robes and fell at the foot of the throne of black bone. Yi Qingtang stared at him blankly. What the hell? Chapter 12:28 Holy Sun 2 Yi Qingtang looked in astonishment at the blood-stained child. She suddenly recalled a rumor about the Temple of Shadows that she had heard in her previous life. Legend had it that at the peak of its power, the Temple of Shadows was not only held by the Holy Lord, but she also had at her command a mutant undead. His power was only slightly inferior to that of the Holy Lord. He was the Holy Son of the Temple of Shadows. If she guessed correctly, this blood-stained child was the legendary mutant undead, the Holy Son of the Temple of Shadows. Ah Yao! How could you be so cruel to abandon me and vanish for so many years? The child saw that Yi Qingtang still did not reply. His exquisite face was aggrieved as if he was about to burst into tears at any moment. When Yi Qingtang saw the child before her, she truly felt like weeping but had no tears. Legend had it that the Holy Son was capricious and was extremely bloodthirsty. Because he was a mutant, he never grew up and remained like a child. However, his reputation for cruelty and viciousness far exceeded that of any undead. Yi Qingtang did not dare to allow this bloodthirsty little fellow to discover that she was an imposter. She had no choice but to pretend to be troubled and keep her mouth shut. When the child saw that Yi Qingtang was not going to respond, his childish face suddenly changed. A warped murderous intent suddenly spread across his face. He suddenly turned, looked at the numerous undead in the hall, and spoke. Ah Ya must be displeased because of the despicable worm who besmirched her 9 souls ring. Where is the human? The numerous undead trembled under the child's cold look. They hurriedly dragged the man with the goatee, whom they had captured earlier, into the main hall. When he saw that the criminal had been caught, the child turned to look at Yi Qingtang. But the moment he turned, the chilling murderous intent on his face instantly turned into an expression of grievance and unease. Ah Yao, don't be angry. It's all my fault for not guarding your things carefully. Don't worry, I'll kill this worm who besmirched your 9 souls ring. Before Yi Qingtang could open her mouth, the child suddenly transformed into a black demonic wind that pounced on the man with the goatee. The man with the goatee turned dead white when he saw the child bare his sharp teeth. He said in fright, Holy Son, have mercy. I have never thought of besmirching the Holy Lord's Dharma treasure. I just admired the Holy Lord too much. Is a lowly worm such as you fit to admire Ah Yao? The child suddenly reached out with his blood-stained little hand. The hand instantly transformed into a bare bone and gripped the skull of the man. You have besmirched Ah Yao's things. I won't let you die so easily. I will carve your name on the stone of nightmares so that you can never be reincarnated. A red light suddenly flickered in the child's eyes as he looked straight at the man with the goatee. For a moment, it was as if the man with the goatee was transfixed. He sat motionlessly on the ground, his eyes distant and fearless. Tell me your name. The child ordered coldly. Mu. Mu sure, the man with the goatee said dully. However, the moment the man with the goatee spoke, a strange look flashed across Yi Qingtang's eyes. He is Musher. During her time in Central Mainland in her previous life, Yi Qingtang had heard of Musher. Musher was from the Eternal Dynasty and was one of the teachers in the Eternal Academy. He was unaccomplished, and no one noticed him, but Chapter 12:29 Holy Sun 3 Musher had vanished many years before Yi Qingtang arrived at the Central Mainland in her previous life. It was only then that people discovered Musher's other identity. Besides being a teacher in the Eternal Academy, Musher had another identity. He was a famous thief in Central Mainland. Legend had it that there was nothing that he could not steal. Yi Qingtang had not intended to concern herself with this fellow who had tried to get her into trouble, but now she changed her mind. Hold on. Just as the child was about to crush Musher's skull, Yi Qingtang suddenly spoke. Ah Yao. The vicious look on the child's face disappeared, and he looked at Yi Qingtang with delight. Ah Yao, are you finally willing to speak to me? The child's face was filled with joy. He immediately flung Musher aside and flew into Yi Qingtang's arms. Ah Yao, next time you must not ignore me. I know I should not have broken your rules previously. In the future, I will definitely obey you. If you forbid me to kill wantonly, I won't kill anymore. Look. I don't use human blood anymore. All this is dear blood. The child crouched on Yi Qingtang's knee and raised his head. He looked at Yi Qingtang as if he was about to cry. He seemed desperately afraid that Yi Qingtang would not believe him, so he waved his small, blood-stained hands under Yi Qingtang's nose. Yi Qingtang looked at this mercurial little child. She did not know what to say. At that moment, a figure slowly walked over. It was a handsome man dressed in white. He leisurely walked over to the throne and bowed to Yi Qingtang. Your servant, Xue Fu, was too late to receive you. Holy Lord, please forgive me. Then Xue Fu said, Holy Lord, Holy Sun is speaking the truth. The Holy Lord was previously displeased because the Holy Sun slaughtered humans and refused to speak to the Holy Sun. However, after the Holy Lord left, the Holy Sun became more restrained. Holy Sun had not left the temple in all these years and has quietly guarded your treasure trove. He has not killed anyone. Ah Yao, did you hear what Xue Fu said? I've really been very good, the child looked at Yi Qingtang pleadingly. Yi Qingtang finally understood. Before the Holy Lord left earlier, she had not spoken to the Holy Sun. That was why the Holy Sun had reacted so violently to her refusal to speak just now. But Yi Qingtang had heard of this undead named Xue Fu in her previous life. He was one of the two guardians of the Temple of Shadows. The undead were naturally fleshless. But if their cultivation reached a high level, they could create an illusion of a body of flesh. Then, they looked just like a human. Yi Qingtang nodded slightly. Just one word was sufficient to make the child's eyes shine brightly. I still need this person. Let him live for a while. Yi Qingtang changed the subject and pointed out why she had spoken just now. Let him live. The child was taken aback. When he looked at Musher, his eyes were filled with murderous intent. But, Yao, he besmirched your things. He is not fit to live in this world. Yi Qingtang secretly took a deep breath. Her face became a little colder. So you are still unwilling to listen to me? Forget it, since that is the case, I'll go. With that, Yi Qingtang made it as she was to arise. When the child saw that Yi Qingtang was about to leave again, he panicked. He burst into tears and clung on to Yi Qingtang's leg. Chapter 12:30 How did I put this on? 1. Ah Yao, ah Yao. I know I was wrong. I'll listen to you, I'll listen to you. If you want to keep him alive, well keep him alive. I'll obey you as long as you don't leave. Yi Qingtang inwardly heaved a sigh of relief when she saw the child who was plastered to her kneel. She had been merely probing and was also looking for an excuse to leave the Temple of Shadows. But it turned out that the notoriously savage Holy Sun could not bear to be apart from the Holy Lord. Men, throw this smelly worm into the dungeon. The child turned and ordered. Now, Yi Qingtang could not leave even if she wanted to. She had no choice but to keep the situation as it was for the time being. Ah Yao, don't be angry. You've been away for so long, so you must be tired. Go and rest. The child spoke gingerly, seemingly terrified that Yi Qingtang would leave. Although Yi Qingtang maintained an expressionless face, she was emotionally exhausted. Heaven knew how much mental energy she had exhausted to put on a show in the Temple of Shadows, which had previously reigned supreme in central mainland. Yi Qingtang nodded. The child only slowly released Yi Qingtang when he saw that she had agreed. Yi Qingtang stretched out her hand and picked up the little white tiger, who had been knocked aside, and cuddled it. When the child saw that little white tiger was in Yi Qingtang's arms, his expression immediately turned murderous. The little white tiger was alarmed by his glare. Fuck, this little devil looks terrifying. I will escort the Holy Lord for a rest. Holy Lord's sleeping chambers have been cleaned every day in anticipation of the Holy Lord's return, said Xuefu. Yi Qingtang nodded and walked towards her sleeping chambers with Xuefu in the lead. As Yi Qingtang walked, the child's guarded expression immediately transformed. He turned to look at all the undead in the main hall with a vicious and cruel expression. Now that Ah Yao is back, if I find out that anyone has made her unhappy, a black flame suddenly burned in the child's hand. As his fist closed, the black smoke instantly exploded. The undead were all silent and nodded repeatedly. The Holy Lord was the supreme symbol of the Temple of Shadows, but it was the capricious and murderous Holy Sun that everyone feared. Yi Qingtang quickly arrived at the Holy Lord's sleeping chambers. When she entered, it was as if she had suddenly returned to normal human dwellings. The sleeping chamber was brightly lit with many lamps. Everything was clean and white. The entire atmosphere was completely incongruous compared to the dim Temple of Shadows. One wall of the sleeping chamber was hung with many portraits. The portraits all looked similar yet different. From emaciated to plump, the features of the person in the portrait had changed slowly from ugly and peculiar to beautiful. In the last portrait, the person looked exactly like Yi Qingtang. These must be the portraits of how the Holy Lord of Shadows slowly transformed from an undead to a human. Yi Qingtang slowly relaxed. Fuck, this Temple of Shadows is really terrifying. Did you see the last look that little devil shot at me? It was as if he wanted to skin me alive there and then. I think we better leave at the first opportunity. If your identity is revealed, we will both die here. The little white tiger hopped out of Yi Qingtang's arms. The capricious Holy Sun's power was probably in the heavenly venerate realm, not to mention the guardians and elders of the Temple of Shadows. Chapter 12:31 How did I put this on? 2. With that kind of power, all they had to do was twitch their fingers, and both of them would be crushed. Do you think that I don't want to leave? Yi Qingtang heaved a wordless sigh. When she was in the main hall just now, she had felt as if she was sitting on a carpet of pins. How she longed to escape from this place. Just as Yi Qingtang was fretting, some noise suddenly came from her voice transmission stone. Miss Yi. Ling Yan's laughing voice slowly came from the voice transmission stone. Ling Yan. Yi Qingtang was slightly taken aback. Ling Yan had not contacted her for a long time. Miss Yi, are you getting used to the central mainland? Ling Yan's voice held a trace of amusement. You knew that embark? Asked Yi Qingtang. I have always been concerned about Miss Yi's affairs. Yi Qingtang remained silent. But then she thought of something and said, Ling Yan, what do you know about the Temple of Shadows? Temple of Shadows? Why is Miss Yi suddenly asking about the Temple of Shadows? Thousands of years ago, the Temple of Shadows represented the height of the undead's power. But in the last few thousand years, it has sunk into obscurity. Rumor has it that their holy lord suddenly vanished, so they began to withdraw their influence. Even so, the Temple of Shadows has long been a very dangerous place, said Ling Yan. What if I told you that I am now in the Temple of Shadows, said Yi Qingtang. Silence fell on the other end of the voice transmission stone. Yi Qingtang knew that Ling Yan was intelligent, so she told him how she had been mistakenly brought to the Temple of Shadows and posed as the Holy Lord. She hoped that Ling Yan would have some way to help her escape. However, quiet laughter came from the voice transmission stone. Yi Qingtang's brows immediately wrinkled. You're still in the mood for laughter? If I'm discovered, who knows how I'll die. Ling Yan burst into laughter again, but just as Yi Qingtang was so infuriated that she wanted to turn off the voice transmission stone, he said, Miss Yi does not need to worry. Since the undead of the Temple of Shadows think you're their holy lord and since you look just like the holy lord, all you have to do is to temporarily maintain the status quo. There is no need to worry about anything else. He said it so casually. Yi Qingtang was speechless. But if Miss Yi is truly worried, then she can just leave. Considering how much the undead of the Temple of Shadows respects the Holy Lord, they will not make things difficult for Miss Yi. But Miss Yi had better not reveal her identity, said Ling Yan. Of course I will not reveal my identity. Yi Qingtang sighed again. As if she would dare to do that. Since Miss Yi is now connected to the Temple of Shadows, she can make use of that. Although the Temple of Shadows is not as powerful as it once was, it is not to be underestimated. The Holy Sun, Minggu, is a mutant undead. He is extremely powerful and is absolutely loyal to the Holy Lord. If Miss Yi uses this opportunity well, perhaps it will help Miss Yi attain her own goals, said Ling Yan. Her own goals. Yi Qingtang sank into deep thought. So Ling Yan had guessed the reason behind her coming to Central Mainland. The empty mainland surfaced in her mind, completely quiet and desolate. The ancient Yu clan was so powerful. Although she intended to snatch little Yu Yun from them, it would naturally be good if she could obtain more help. She did not yet know if the Temple of Shadows would be a blessing or a curse. The Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows is not only powerful but also has many Dharma treasures. Miss Yi can borrow a few of them. Ling Yan continued. Chapter 1232, How did I put this on? 3. Yi Qingtang sighed. If she could properly grasp the opportunity that the Temple of Shadows presented, of course that would be the best. But now, she did not dare to grasp it. Just remaining undetected was a problem. I will take note of that, Yi Qingtang said. Miss Yi does not need to worry. Anytime you are troubled, I am always willing to lend a listening ear. Ling Yan's laughing voice rang out again. Yi Qingtang wanted to say a few more words, but there was a sudden knocking on the door of her sleeping chambers. Yi Qingtang immediately turned off the voice transmission stone and opened the door. An undead was standing outside the door, holding an intricate gold-gilded black box. When it saw Yi Qingtang, it immediately bowed. Holy Lord, the Holy Sun ordered me to bring all the Dharma artifacts to the Holy Lord. Yi Qingtang took the box and nodded slightly. The undead spoke again. Holy Lord, please rest assured that other than the incident with the 9 souls ring, no one has touched the Holy Lord's things. It doesn't matter, replied Yi Qingtang. The undead was slightly taken aback and then immediately responded. I have said too much. After all, only the Holy Lord herself can use her Dharma artifacts. Even if someone else obtained them, they would be useless. I should not have spoken out of turn. I will now go and accept my punishment. Before Yi Qingtang could speak, the undead covered its face and ran off to accept its punishment. Why are these undead all volunteering for punishment like masochists? The little white tiger poked its head out and muttered as it watched the disappearing figure. But Yi Qingtang stood there in a daze. Only the Holy Lord could use her things. What did it mean? She almost subconsciously turned on the voice transmission stone. Ling Yan, is it true that only the Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows can use her Dharma artifacts? That is what the rumors say, replied Ling Yan. Then why did you ask me to borrow them? Yi Qingtang murmured. A laugh came from the other end of the voice transmission stone. That's what the rumors say, but since it is you, Miss Yi, I think you can use them. What does that mean? Yi Qingtang vaguely sensed that Ling Yan's words had a deeper meaning. But this time, Ling Yan did not reply. After waiting for a moment, Yi Qingtang realized that Ling Yan had turned off his voice transmission stone. Perhaps something had happened on his side. Yi Qingtang carried the gold-gilded black box and sat wordlessly on a chair. She wanted to open the box but realized that the black box was locked and could only be opened by an incantation. The incantation was carved on the outside of the black box, but it was in the language of the undead clan. Yi Qingtang could not read a single word. Forget it, even if I opened it, I probably can't use it. Yi Qingtang set the gold-gilded black box aside. But the little white tiger walked around the black box, then suddenly jumped into Yi Qingtang's lap. It stared at Yi Qingtang's face. Yi Qingtang was puzzled by the little white tiger's stare. But the little white tiger said, "No one else can use the Holy Lord's Dharma artifacts." Yi Qingtang nodded slightly. The little white tiger's gaze suddenly fell on Yi Qingtang's wrist. Then how did you put the 9 souls rings on previously? Yi Qingtang was startled. At that moment, she remembered that she had previously put on the 9 souls rings as the undead looked on. Yi Qingtang subconsciously felt her wrist. She could clearly feel the shape of the 9 souls rings. How had she put it on? Chapter 1233, Doubts. 1. Just as Yi Qingtang and the little white tiger were puzzling over the matter, in the Temple of Shadows, Holy Sun Minggu was looking extremely pleased. He returned to his room and tidied up his things. He looked at some small bones that had been painted gold and reached out his small hand to pick them up. Minggu, what are you doing? The guardian, Shui Fu, was leaning on the door with his hands crossed over his chest, watching Minggu as he bustled around. Minggu did not even raise his head but continued to focus on picking the small, golden bones. He said, "I want to string a necklace for Ah Yao." Shui Fu wiped his forehead and shook his head laughingly. "String your necklace later. Holy Sun Ming Wang has returned to the temple." The moment Shui Fu spoke, Minggu immediately raised his head and looked at Shui Fu with his dark eyes. "Elder brother has returned very quickly. I only just sent the news to him, and he's back already." With that, Minggu put away his things and ran to the main hall. The main hall currently felt rather constrained. A petite, exquisite-looking child wearing black and gold armor was standing in the center of the main hall. His exquisite little face was identical to Minggu's face. However, this child was surrounded by an evil aura. Several peculiar-looking figures quietly stood next to the child. The Temple of Shadows was the glory of the clan of the undead, and the Holy Lord was a powerful figure from the skeleton tribe within the clan of the undead. When the Holy Lord previously led everyone from the second domain to the central mainland, the skeleton tribe was not the only tribe in the clan of the undead to come along. The clan of the undead was divided into many different tribes. The Holy Lord and the powerful figures of the other tribes had led their tribes here together. Now, these powerful figures from the different tribes were tribe leaders in the central mainland. At the moment, the undead standing next to the child were some of these tribe leaders. "Ming Wang, is your news accurate? Has the Holy Lord really returned?" spoke a burly man who looked as vicious as a devil and stood more than 3 meters tall. Within the undead clan, he was the leader of the demon tribe. He turned his huge head to look at Ming Wang, who was only the size of his palm. Minggu sent the news. Ming Wang spoke calmly. His eyes were completely cold. The various tribe leaders exchanged a look but did not say anything else. The Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows was a powerful figure of the skeleton tribe. Although the members of the main tribes of the clan of the undead gathered in the Temple of Shadows, in the past, the power of the Holy Lord had elevated the entire skeleton tribe's status in the Temple of Shadows. But, the Holy Lord had vanished a long time ago. Outsiders only knew that within the Temple of Shadows, the Holy Sun was renowned for his cruelty. But they did not know that the Temple of Shadows had two holy suns. One was Minggu, the other was Mingwang. If one said that Minggu was only cruel sometimes and childish at other times, then Mingwang was only cruel. Mingwang had been discussing some matters with these tribe leaders when he received news from his younger brother, Minggu, that the Holy Lord had returned to the temple. When the tribe leaders with Mingwang heard the news, some of them were curious and had tagged along. After a moment, Minggu rushed in. "Elder brother, you're back." "Ah Yao. Ah Yao has really returned," Minggu said excitedly when he saw Mingwang. Chapter 1234, Doubts, 2. However, Mingwang remained expressionless as he looked at his younger brother's agitated face. "I know. Where is she?" Mingwang said expressionlessly. "Resting in her sleeping chambers." "Elder brother, I'm so happy that Yao is really back." Minggu was in a rush to share his joy with Mingwang. But before he could finish speaking, Mingwang swept a cold look at him. Minggu's remaining words stuck in his throat. "Minggu." Mingwang raised his head slightly and narrowed his black eyes, which swept across his younger brother's face. "You are too noisy." Minggu was stunned. When he saw the chill in Mingwang's eyes, he subconsciously shrank back. The undead had no twins. But he and Mingwang were a rare pair of twins and were also mutant undead. They were born with immense abilities, but compared to Mingwang, he was much weaker. Minggu held a bone-deep reverence for his elder brother. "How do you know that she is Yao?" Mingwang asked coldly. Minggu was slightly taken aback. Yao is Yao, of course I know, idiot." Mingwang grunted coldly. "Since the Holy Lord is back, we should follow the rules of the Temple of Shadows." Mingwang did not look at his younger brother again. He turned to a slender girl with an enchanting face, who was standing next to him. "Guardian of Ghosts, go and make your preparations and invite the Holy Lord to the Hall of Gloom." Meanwhile, Yiqingtang was still discussing the matter of the 9 souls rings with the little white tiger. Not long after, someone knocked on the room door. Yiqingtang had no choice but to put aside her bewilderment and open the door. The door opened to reveal a scantily clad and enchanting-looking girl lounging against the door. When she suddenly saw Yiqingtang at the doorway, a look of surprise flashed across her green eyes. But the surprise instantly vanished, and she smiled charmingly at Yiqingtang and spoke. "Your subordinate, Lady Ghost, greets the Holy Lord. The Holy Lord's return is a joyful event. Please Holy Lord, come to the Hall of Gloom." "Hall of Gloom?" Yiqingtang looked at Lady Ghost standing before her. An ominous foreboding rose in her heart, but she maintained her composure and nodded slightly. With the little white tiger in tow, Yiqingtang walked with Lady Ghost to the Hall of Gloom. Along the way, she thought about what she was soon to encounter. The Hall of Gloom was where ceremonies were carried out in the Temple of Shadows and was hundreds of meters underground. After a long walk, Yiqingtang finally came to a broad space. It was a grand hall, so large that its end could not be seen at a glance. When she raised her head, she could not even see the hall ceiling. At first glance, it looked like a public square bathed in darkness. A huge picture of a skeleton was carved in the center of the Hall of Gloom. Around it were circular pictures in which black, glittering gems were embedded. Only a green flame lit the Hall of Gloom. It was both dim and oppressive. Minggu and the other tribe leaders who were already in the Hall of Gloom looked at Yi Qingtang as she walked over slowly. Their first glance shocked them. The girl in front of them looked exactly like their long-lost Holy Lord. Is this girl really the Holy Lord? The leader of the demon tribe looked at Yi Qingtang and lowered his voice to whisper to the leader of the goblin tribe, who was standing next to him. Chapter 1235, Doubts, 3. The leader of the goblin tribe was a slender man. He was extremely handsome but a little effeminate. He secretly studied Yi Qingtang and said softly, "The Holy Lord vanished a long time ago. No one knows why she vanished and where she has been all this time. I heard that those who first met the Holy Lord this time only coincidentally found her along the way. I think it's rather peculiar. Could it be that this Holy Lord is an impostor?" The leader of the demon tribe asked. "We don't know yet. But Ming Wang must also be suspicious of her identity, which is why he is carrying out this ceremony. We can just wait and see." The leader of the goblin tribe laughed softly. A sharp look suddenly flashed across his eyes. "If she is fake, she will certainly die," the leader of the demon tribe said with a cold laugh. At that moment, Yi Qingtang had just stepped into the dim hall. She vaguely sensed that something was amiss, and the ominous foreboding in her heart grew stronger. She tried her best to maintain her composure. Her gaze swept across all the undead present. Among the numerous undead, Yi Qingtang saw a few figures with powerful breaths. They looked extremely peculiar. Their appearance and breaths clearly showed that they were different from Xue Fu and the skeleton tribe she had met earlier. In her previous life, Yi Qingtang had heard many things about the undead. Naturally, she also knew that the clan of the undead was divided into many tribes. When she saw the breaths and auras of these undead, she thought that they were probably the various legendary tribe leaders within the clan of the undead. Besides these tribe leaders, Yi Qingtang also saw two little fellows who looked exactly alike. They were standing right in front of her. Although they were identical, the two children gave off different airs. Yi Qingtang was stunned. "Ah Yao!" The moment Minggu saw Yi Qingtang, he charmingly reached out to ask for a hug. But before he could take a step, the expressionless Ming Wang, who was standing next to him, held him back. Ming Wang raised his eyes slightly. His calm black eyes looked straight at Yi Qingtang. His sharp gaze was clearly searching. Yi Qingtang kept her face still and met his gaze directly. Although she was inwardly shocked, how Ming Wang acted towards Minggu clearly showed that the former constrained the latter. In the entire Temple of Shadows, there must be only a few who were imposing enough to dare to act like that towards the Holy Son, Minggu. Furthermore, these children were identical, twins were rare in the clan of the undead. Even when they appeared, they were certainly mutant undead. Rumor had it that the Holy Son of the Temple of Shadows was a rare mutant undead. However, when twins were born in the clan of the undead, ultimately, only one could survive. Hence, everyone naturally assumed that the other child must have died long ago. But now, Yi Qingtang realized that the rumors that had reached the outside world were probably wrong. The child who looked just like Minggu must be Minggu's brother. However, although they were brothers, the children were like chalk and cheese. "We greet the Holy Lord." The tribe leaders now went forward and gave shallow bows to Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang nodded slightly, but she was inwardly on full alert. Ming Wang, who was standing nearby, spoke coldly. "Holy Lord, please ascend the tower." "Ascend the tower?" Yi Qingtang was dumbfounded. She looked around with the corner of her eyes, but she was surrounded by flat ground. Where was the tower? Yi Qingtang did not make any move. All the undead present were staring at her. Chapter 1236, Pagoda of the Dead, 1. At that moment, Yi Qingtang almost collapsed emotionally. Legends of the Temple of Shadows usually described its power and mystery but had never recorded what it was like inside. Come to think of it, no outsider would know about these matters. Now, Yi Qingtang was at her wit's end. Just as Yi Qingtang was about to secretly search for the location of the pagoda, Ling Yan's voice suddenly rang out. At that moment, Ling Yan's voice was extremely soft, and only Yi Qingtang could hear it. Miss Yi, don't move. Ling Yan. When Yi Qingtang heard Ling Yan's voice, it was as if heavenly music sounded in her ears. However, she was in the Hall of Gloom, and all the undead had their eyes fixed on her, so she could not show the slightest sign that something unusual was happening and could not reply. At that moment, Yi Qingtang could only follow Ling Yan's instructions and remain expressionlessly in her original spot. She looked at Ming Wang. Ming Wang had been secretly studying Yi Qingtang's movements. After a moment, Ming Wang suddenly shouted coldly. How dare you! This low shout so frightened Yi Qingtang that she broke out in a cold sweat. At Ming Wang's shout, an undead kneeled down in a panic. I deserve to die. How can there be any delay during a ritual? You can't even get a small thing right. Ming Wang's gaze suddenly fell on the kneeling undead. His small gray hand opened suddenly. The next moment, his fingers suddenly arched. The undead kneeling on the ground was instantly crushed by an invisible force. Its entire body transformed into a pile of ashes before their eyes. Yi Qingtang was shocked. One must know that, the undead who had just died had the power of arcane supremacy fifth heaven. Even she was no match for him. But Ming Wang had crushed such a powerful figure into powder without even touching him. This Ming Wang was truly terrible. The Holy Lord's return is a joyous occasion. There is no need to spoil the mood over such a small matter. Let me, Lady Ghost, activate the pagoda of the dead for the Holy Lord, said Lady Ghost. With that, she leaped up and suddenly took down one of the lamps that were hanging everywhere. The moment she took down the lamp, the ground in front of the Hall of Gloom began to shake. With a might quake, black fumes of death suddenly spurted out from the huge skeleton's mouth that was carved on the ground. The endless fumes of death entwined to form a mirage of the Tower of the Dead. An altar suddenly appeared at the top of the pagoda. Holy Lord, please ascend the pagoda. Lady Ghost descended to the ground and bowed to Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang looked at the unreal, almost partially transparent pagoda of the dead. Her heart beat like a drum. How was she supposed to step into a pagoda that seemed to be made of smoke and mist? However, given the circumstances, she had no choice but to steel herself and ascend the pagoda. Yi Qingtang secretly took a deep breath and walked step by step towards the pagoda of the dead. But she could clearly sense numerous eyes behind her, watching her every move. Yi Qingtang stepped into the pagoda of the dead. Although it looked unreal, it felt solid. Yi Qingtang had no choice but to continue upwards. Yi Qingtang could clearly sense that Ming Wang and the tribe leaders did not believe that she was the Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows. This was probably a test of her identity. At that moment, Ling Yan's voice rang out again. Miss Yi, how much do you know about the Holy Lord of Shadows? Chapter 1237, Pagoda of the Dead, 2. I've heard a little, Yi Qingtang said softly as she gingerly walked across the Pagoda of the Dead. The Holy Lord of Shadows was supremely powerful in Central Mainland. She commanded millions of undead, and all the clans in the mainland bowed to her. Miss Yi, if you want the undead of the Temple of Shadows to believe that you are the Holy Lord, you need to imitate her attitude and behavior. The Holy Lord of Shadows is not as easygoing a mistress as Miss Yi. I am now in the Pagoda of the Dead. What am I supposed to do? Yi Qingtang vaguely understood Ling Yan's meaning, but it did not apply to her current situation. The Pagoda of the Dead is a sacred pagoda in the Temple of Shadows. Millions of souls are gathered within it. Every so often, the Holy Lord of Shadows needs to release some of these twisted souls and pray for blessings for the entire clan of the undead. Miss Yi only needs to walk to the top of the pagoda and sing the incantation of the undead at the altar, said Ling Yan. What incantation? The nearer she got to the top of the pagoda, the more Yi Qingtang felt worried. Ling Yan was quiet for a moment. Then, he sang an obscure incantation of the undead. Yi Qingtang had never come across this incantation of the undead. Even with Ling Yan smoothly singing it in her ear, it sounded very foreign. However, she had already arrived at the top of the pagoda of the dead and was standing next to the altar. At the bottom of the pagoda of the dead, Ming Wang and the other tribe leaders were closely following Yi Qingtang's every move. With Ling Yan continually repeating the incantation, Yi Qingtang finally memorized some of it. She somewhat awkwardly imitated the incantation that Ling Yan had spoken and sang the incantation of release. As Yi Qingtang sang, numerous black shadows suddenly poured out of the altar. The black shadows wailed continually. They coiled upwards as if they were enclosed in a whirlwind and rose towards the ceiling of the Hall of Gloom. The wailing of the souls reverberated through the entire hall. However, at that moment, Ming Wang's eyes narrowed slightly. Something was amiss. As millions of souls were released, their wails echoed in his ears for a long time before slowly dissipating. The souls seemed to vanish in the darkness. Miss Yi, you can go down now. With that, Yi Qingtang climbed down the pagoda of the dead. Ming Wang was expressionless. His gaze swept across Yi Qingtang's face, and he said, "Holy Lord, you must be tired after we have troubled you to conduct the ritual today." Yi Qingtang felt as if she had just had a brush with death. If not for Ling Yan, she would have been completely exposed. After the ritual ended, Yi Qingtang went back to her sleeping chambers. As Yi Qingtang left, many undead also left the Hall of Gloom. Only the tribe leaders, elders, guardians, Ming Gu, and Ming Wang remained behind. This Holy Lord is probably an impostor, the leader of the goblin tribe swept a look at all the undead present as he spoke. The leader of the demon tribe also frowned. I think she is most likely a fake. When she sang the incantation just now, it was clearly different from how she sang it previously. They felt that the Holy Lord's sudden return was suspicious. Now, although Yi Qingtang had followed the rituals and completed them in a satisfactory manner, there were many differences compared to how the Holy Lord had completed the rituals in the past. I remember that the Holy Lord used to fly to the top of the pagoda. This is the first time I have seen her walk up step by step, Lady Ghost said with a soft laugh. The incantation was also rather jerky. It was completely unlike the Holy Lord's cold and arrogant air, the leader of the demon tribe said with a frown. Chapter 1238, Pagoda of the Dead, 3, Don't talk nonsense, she is Ah Yao. Minggu panicked when he saw that everyone was beginning to doubt Yi Qingtang's identity. Only senior members of Clan of the Undead know the incantation of blessing. If she is an impostor, how would she know it? There were a few elders in the Clan of the Undead who have left the Temple of Shadows. It is possible that they leaked it, said the leader of the Goblin tribe. I don't think so. The Holy Lord has been gone for so long. Without the Pagoda of the Dead, she naturally had no need to sing the incantation of blessing. It is natural that the recitation was a little choppy. Also, no one knows what the Holy Lord has experienced during this long interval. It is normal for habits to change. Xue Fu agreed. Change? Aren't these changes too big? Since when has the Holy Lord been so affable? The leader of the demon tribe grunted coldly. I already said that she might have had some encounter that caused her personality to change. Why won't you listen? The panic on Minggu's face instantly turned murderous. Ah Yao has already put on the 9 souls rings, how can she be a fake? In this world, who but Ah Yao herself can wear her Dharma artifacts? The tribe leaders were all stunned by Minggu's words. They immediately looked at Ming Wang. Ming Wang, what do you think? Ming Wang had remained silent up to that point. At that moment, he raised his head slightly. His black eyes were narrowed slightly and had an icy look. We have ample time. We will eventually find out if she is authentic or not. Ming Gu was shocked when he saw Ming Wang's icy expression. Elder brother, Ming Wang swept a cold look at him. Shut up, you idiot. If she is really Yao, I certainly will not hurt her. If she isn't, I will make sure she begs for death. Ming Gu bit his lips. He looked at his elder brother who was filled with murderous intent and forced his fear down. He argued. But the 9 souls ring, how can you prove that the 9 souls ring is real? Ming Wang looked at Ming Gu coldly. That's right. The 9 souls ring was stolen, and we only encountered the Holy Lord while in pursuit of the ring. In that interval, the 9 souls ring was with that human. If someone is pretending to the Holy Lord, then she must be in cahoots with that human to secretly swap the ring and confuse us, Lady Ghost said. Ming Gu glared at Lady Ghost furiously. All this is just our conjecture. We cannot be certain of anything. If she is an impostor, then it won't matter. But if she is really the Holy Lord and we offend her, we will be guilty of a terrible crime. Xue Fu spoke carefully when he saw that Ming Wang and the tribe leaders did not believe in Yi Qingtang's identity. With that, silence fell in the Hall of Gloom. It was just this worry that prevented them from acting hastily. It was no joking matter to offend the Holy Lord. I will investigate this matter, Ming Wang said calmly. With Ming Wang on the job, we don't need to worry. The tribe leaders nodded and left successively. However, they all had some suspicions of this holy lady who had suddenly returned. Only Ming Gu was unwavering in his faith. Meanwhile, Ling Yan was rubbing the voice transmission stone in his hand. A faint smile lurked in the corners of his mouth. When the little azure dragon saw Ling Yan's expression, it secretly sneered. Honestly, was it your plan for Yi Qingtang to go to the Temple of Shadows? It was already part of your plan, wasn't it? Said the little azure dragon. Chapter 1239, Authentic or Fake, 1, Ling Yan chuckled. It will be very difficult for Miss Yi to single-handedly take on the ancient Yu clan. So this was all part of your plan. The little azure dragon widened its eyes slightly. Ling Yan was truly brilliant to be able to manipulate people so precisely from 1,000 miles away. Ling Yan laughed but did not reply. In the Temple of Shadows, Yi Qingtang had returned to her sleeping chambers. But the moment she recalled the events of the Hall of Gloom, she felt terrified again. If Ling Yan had not known the incantation of blessing, Yi Qingtang would have been exposed there and then. When she thought about it, Yi Qingtang could not help but take out the voice transmission stone. Ling Yan. Yes, I'm here. Ling Yan's rather indolent voice rang out from the voice transmission stone. Thank you, said Yi Qingtang. Ling Yan chuckled. If Miss Yi really wants to thank me, why not marry me? Yi Qingtang was just beginning to feel a little touched, but Ling Yan's words immediately dispelled her emotions. Marry him. As if. Miss Yi has merely lulled the suspicions of Ming Wang and the tribe leaders. But in order to completely dispel their suspicions, Miss Yi needs to begin imitating some of the Holy Lord's behavior in the Temple of Shadows. Ling Yan changed the subject. Yi Qingtang grew serious. I don't know much about the Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows. Miss Yi only needs to listen to me. The Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows is unpredictable. She usually shows a smiling face to everyone. Ling Yan slowly introduced Yi Qingtang to some of the behaviors of the Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows. The Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows used to be supremely powerful in this mainland. Although she had the appearance of a slender girl, no one dared to offend her in the least. What was most terrifying about the Holy Lord was her capricious nature. Although she was always smiling, she killed without blinking an eye. Even when she was attacked by powerful figures from the second domain, she had chatted and laughed while carrying out a bloody slaughter. Many secretly called her the smiling god of death. As Yi Qingtang carefully listened to Ling Yan's synopsis, she got the general idea. After speaking to Ling Yan for a while, the two broke off their connection. In just one short day, Yi Qingtang had experienced a severe shock. In a powerful place like the Temple of Shadows, a single slip would lead to death. What was even more frightening was that Ming Wang and the tribe leaders had begun to suspect her. One misstep and she was dead. If possible, Yi Qingtang wished to escape as quickly as possible. But given the present circumstances, she was unable to leave. She had no choice but to slowly dispel their doubts to save herself. In the Temple of Shadows, Ming Wang was standing in the empty main hall, looking at the black bone throne. His face was expressionless. In the gloom, an image seemed to appear on the black bone throne. Ming Wang's expression flickered. There was a sound of soft footsteps. Ming Wang suddenly raised his hand, and with a wave, the image on the black bone throne vanished completely. Holy Sun. A stooped old man walked over slowly. He was wearing a large black cape, but white bones on his back pierced the cape and could be seen from the outside. What did the human say? Ming Wang turned to look at the old man. The old man was the master of the Hall of Justice in the Temple of Shadows. He specialized in various forms of torture. He had millions of ways to open the most tight-lipped mouths. Chapter 1240, Authentic or Fake? 2. Ming Wang had his suspicions regarding the Nine Souls Ring incident, so he ordered the master of the Hall of Justice to go to the dungeons to interrogate Mu Shi. Reporting to the Holy Sun, the human says that he did not swap the Nine Souls Ring. I also searched his space ring and found no trace of the Nine Souls Ring, the master of the Hall of Justice reported. It was just a simple sentence, but anyone who had suffered his torture would not be able to hide any secrets. Ming Wang frowned slightly. The suspicions in his heart were not yet dispelled. There's one more thing, speak. The Luo family sent an invitation to tomorrow's birthday banquet for their grand elder. As he spoke, the master of the Hall of Justice placed the invitation in Ming Wang's hand. I am informing the Holy Sun because the Holy Lord is resting, and I am afraid to disturb her. Ming Wang took the invitation. A strange look flashed across his black eyes. The Luo family. Luo Zufeng must be more than 1,000 years old now. Ming Wang suddenly asked. The Luo family was one of the ancient clans in central mainland. Their foundations were solid, and their grand elder, Luo Zufeng, was outstandingly powerful. His position in this mainland was a lofty one. The Luo family had nothing to do with the Temple of Shadows. Although their bases of power were close to each other, they usually minded their own business. Yes, the master of the Hall of Justice said. Ming Wang narrowed his eyes slightly, as if he suddenly thought of something. Since that is the case and since the Holy Lord has just returned to the temple, she might as well take the opportunity to let the outside world know that she has returned. Send this invitation to the Holy Lord. The master of the Hall of Justice was somewhat taken aback. He took the invitation and brought it to Yi Qingtang's sleeping chambers. In her sleeping chambers, Yi Qingtang was familiarizing herself with the Holy Lord's behavioral patterns. Fortunately, there were many portraits of the Holy Lord in the sleeping chamber. Together with Ling Yan's description, Yi Qingtang began to grasp some of the Holy Lord's expressions. Yi Qingtang opened the room door in response to a knock and took the Luo family's invitation from the master of the Hall of Justice. Yi Qingtang could not help but frown slightly when she saw Luo Qufeng's name on the invitation. Yi Qingtang had known this Luo Zufeng in her previous life. He was an extremely talented and powerful figure in central mainland. Now, he must be about 1,000 years old. In her previous life, he had been a powerful tyrant in this mainland. In her previous life, the truth about Yi Qingtang's heart of the demon god had been revealed sometime after she had arrived in central mainland. This Luo Zifeng had ordered the Luo family to pursue her in an attempt to rob her of the heart of the demon god. Yi Qingtang had narrowly escaped death a few times, but they had all been close calls. But it turned out that, in this life, she was going to attend Luo Qifeng's birthday banquet in the capacity of the Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows. Yi Qingtang was not stupid. She guessed that this invitation was another test. In the Temple of Shadows, she could use the excuse of remaining in her sleeping chambers to escape observation. But if she went out, sure enough, the next afternoon, Yi Qingtang saw a group of undead standing in the main hall of the Temple of Shadows. There were about a dozen of them, and one of them was the hall master. These undead were chosen to accompany Yi Qingtang to the Luo family to present her good wishes. On the surface, they were accompanying her, but Yi Qingtang knew that Ming Wang had sent these undead to secretly observe her. Chapter 1241, Authentic or Fake? 3. Ah Yao. The moment Minggu saw Yi Qingtang, he scuttled over and pressed his little face against her. He clutched Yi Qingtang's leg and hugged it. Meanwhile, Ming Wang looked at Yi Qingtang expressionlessly. Although his expression was civil, he was clearly secretly observing her. Yi Qingtang secretly took a deep breath. A trace of a smile suddenly appeared in the corner of her mouth. She reached out and picked up Minggu. Be good and wait here for me. Minggu was shocked by such tenderness. His eyes opened wide in agitation. When he saw that familiar smile, Minggu hugged Yi Qingtang around the neck. Ah Yao, I will certainly wait obediently in the temple for you. Ah Yao had finally smiled. When Ming Wang, who was standing nearby, saw the smile on Yi Qingtang's face, a surge of emotion involuntarily flashed across his eyes. But he quickly forced it down. As Yi Qingtang teased Minggu, she secretly observed Ming Wang from the corner of her eye. It looked like Ling Yan was accurate. Yi Qingtang had been too constrained previously because of her uneasiness. This had aroused even more suspicions. Now, she only needed to properly act the role of Holy Lord and slowly dispel these suspicions in order to preserve her life. Ling Yan had said that there were two Holy Lords in the Temple of Shadows, one was capricious, and the other was gloomy. In the presence of the Holy Lord, Minggu acted like an immature child. The Holy Lord also treated him like a child, doting on him and guiding him. As a result, Minggu had become very attached to the Holy Lord. Alright, I have to go. Yi Qingtang saw that she was having an effect and put Minggu down. Minggu seemed to be in a trance of delight over the hug. He held his little fists in front of his chest and gazed blissfully at Yi Qingtang. This time, Yi Qingtang did not bring the little white tiger along. After the preparations were complete, she led the dozen undead to the Luo house. The Luo family had a great influence in the area. All the powerful figures in the neighboring area had come to present their good wishes at the Grand Elder's birthday banquet. It was evening, and rays from the setting sun were scattered over the ground. The enormous Luo house stood proudly in the dying light of the evening. An endless stream of guests arrived at the Luo house. Dozens of Luo family guards stood at attention outside the main door. It was a magnificent sight. The Luo house was gaily decorated and brightly lit with numerous lamps. A white-robed youth slowly walked among the guests. A pair of pure white wings grew from his back. In the light of the lamps, they looked exceptionally pristine and beautiful. Uncle, who exactly is Luo Zifeng? I saw many alien clans here too. The youth with the white wings widened his blue eyes and looked at a tall, handsome man. This man also had a pair of white wings growing from his back. They were similar to the youth's wings except that his feathers were slightly gray and seemed to be stronger. They were from the clan of winged people. Their Palace of Wings had received an invitation to Luo Qufeng's birthday banquet, and they had made a special trip to offer their good wishes. Luo Qufeng is the grand elder of the Luo family. He participated in the battle between the central mainland and the second domain. He is extremely powerful but has seldom appeared in recent years. However, he still maintains his former status, the winged man said with a smile. The battle with the second domain? Uncle, didn't you participate in it too? The winged youth asked curiously. Chapter 1242, Luo Family, 1. One must know that the battle between the central mainland and the second domain was earth-shattering. Although it had happened thousands of years ago, it continued to be spoken of. The winged man laughed and shook his head. At that time, your uncle was not powerful enough and did not actually enter the main battlefield. I only participated in other battles. The winged youth seemed rather puzzled. However, he was clearly curious about this historical battle. Uncle, I heard that the battle was extremely intense and that central mainland suffered terrible losses. That's right. The winged man nodded slightly. If the Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows had not led the senior members of the temple in an attempt to turn the tide, the battle might have been lost. The Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows? Hasn't she been missing for a long time? Before the winged man could answer, the current master of the Luo family, Luo Feng, slowly walked over. He immediately stopped talking and advanced. Master of the Luo family. Brother Lan, how have you been? Luo Feng looked to be about middle-aged, but he was more than 100 years old. Even so, he looked much younger than the winged man, who looked like he was in his 20s. So, it was not strange for Luo Feng to call him Brother Lan. I am sorry that I am unable to personally congratulate old Master Luo on his birthday. I hope the master of the Luo family will convey my good wishes, the winged man, who was called Lan Yu, said with a smile. You are too kind. The Luo family and the Palace of Wings have always been on good terms. There is no need to stand on ceremony, said Luo Feng with a smile. Luo Feng chatted with Lan Yu for a while before he went to greet his other guests. Numerous guests had come to congratulate Luo Qufeng at his birthday banquet, many of which were powerful and influential. Lan Yu was just about to continue his previous conversation with his nephew when a petite little fellow with a huge wine gourd on its back dashed over. This little fellow looked somewhat like a cat with a pair of large, furry ears. Its entire body was covered with fluffy hairs, and it wore an intricately worked set of leather armor. It jumped about gaily, its large, fluffy tail swaying lazily behind it. Lan Yu laughed when he saw this little fellow, who stood only as high as his knee, approach. Mi Qiu, the birthday banquet has not even officially started. Why are you already drunk? The furry little fellow swept a glance at Lan Yu and simply sat down, leaning on Lan Ye's leg. Its large fluffy tail curled up and took down the huge wine gourd on its back. It held the gourd firmly with 4 small claws and used its sharp teeth to open the lid of the gourd. The fragrance of wine spread from the gourd. It held the gourd full of good wine and gulped it down. Burp. The master doesn't like what you're saying. Since when has the master been sober? The small and adorable Mi Qiu actually spoke in the careless tones of a man. Although Mi Qiu looked adorable and harmless, it was actually part of the Qiu clan and was vicious by nature. The Qiu clan was actually an animal clan. Although they looked like animals, they acted like humans. No matter how adorable they looked, they were usually very aggressive. Besides that, the Qiu clan was known for their love of wine. Which was why members of the Qiu clan were often seen carrying large wine gourds on their backs. The Qiu clan was often in a half-drunken stupor. But their capacity for liquor was shocking. Chapter 1243, Luo Family, 2. Today is Luo Qufeng's birthday banquet. You better restrain yourself a little, Lan Yu said with a laugh. Mi Qiu ignored him and took another gulp of wine. The master is only here to make up the numbers. I'm not involved with the birthday banquet later, but the Luo family's wine is really fragrant. Before you go, remember to remind the master to bring a few carriages of it back with me. Burp. Lan Yu shook his head wordlessly. It was the nature of the Qiu clan to have no respect for anyone. They not only wanted to bring back wine when attending a birthday banquet, but they even wanted a few carriages of it. The winged youth standing nearby was still young and had not had much contact with the Qiu clan. His youthful blue eyes widened as he looked at the little fellow leaning on his uncle's leg and drinking itself into a stupor. He was filled with curiosity. It was just a little fellow, yet why did it keep referring to itself as master? Besides the winged people and the Qiu clan, there were many alien clans at tonight's birthday banquet. They all looked rather strange. Some were vicious-looking, some were gray, and some were furry. The winged youth was still wondering to himself when he felt the ground beneath his feet begin to shake. At that moment, a few giants, who stood dozens of meters tall, slowly walked in among the guests. The ground beneath everyone's feet shook with every step that they took. Burp, even the giant clan is here. Mi Qiu took a look, then gulped a mouthful of wine, and muttered to himself. The giants were huge. They were especially conspicuous in the crowd. However, the Luo family had already prepared special seats for them. The giants looked like small mountains piled up in the Luo house courtyard when they sat down. A female giant was wearing a huge dress. When she sat, her skirt drifted down and whipped up a wild wind that almost sent Mi Qiu, who was sitting nearby, flying. The entire courtyard was bustling. Many guests had brought rich gifts. The evening sank into the night, and the birthday banquet was about to start. Luo Feng stood amidst the guests. He swept a glance over everyone present. However, the warm smile that hung on his lips seemed a little strange. Elder brother, it's about time. Grand Elder and the others are about to come over. A middle-aged man, who looked very similar to Luo Feng, walked over. He was Luo Feng's younger brother, Luo Qi, and also the deputy master of the Luo family. Luo Feng nodded and walked to the front of the courtyard. He said to all the guests, "Today is the birthday of the Grand Elder of our Luo family. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Allow me to toast you." With that, Luo Feng gave a signal to the servants. Hundreds of servants immediately brought out wine and served the guests. The master finally gets to taste this wine. Mi Qiu took a cup of wine and drank it without a second word. The speed at which it drank the wine shocked the servant who had brought the wine. It was not time to drink yet. All right, hand all this over to the master. While the servant was still in a state of shock, Mi Qiu stood on its back legs and took the entire tray and all the wine on it. Lan Yu, who was standing nearby, sighed helplessly. When all the wine had been distributed, Luo Feng raised his cup. Please. With that, he emptied his cup. Many had heard that the Luo family's wine was of an excellent vintage. They emptied their cups. The wine was indeed excellent. Chapter 1244, Luo Family, 3. However, just as Luo Feng and his guests were emptying their cups, the guards at the door suddenly announced loudly, "The Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows is here to present her good wishes." The pronouncement made by that piercing voice dumbfounded everyone. The Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows? Have I heard wrongly? Perhaps they have announced the wrong name. Hasn't the Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows been missing for thousands of years? It was mostly the external world that spread the rumors that the Holy Lord had gone missing. The Temple of Shadows itself has never confirmed the rumor. Perhaps the Holy Lord was never missing in the first place. The guests all discussed the matter avidly. Even the master of the Luo family, Luo Feng, could not help but show a trace of surprise. They had invited the Temple of Shadows out of courtesy because the two centers of power were near each other. They had previously sent many similar invitations, but the Temple of Shadows had never sent a representative. They had, at most, sent a gift. But it turned out that, the Temple of Shadows had not only come this time, but the person who came was the Holy Lord, who had vanished for thousands of years. In Central Mainland, there was no real distinction between good and evil. Here, might was right. The Temple of Shadows had been supremely powerful in Central Mainland. Many people had the utmost regard for it and did not dare to offend it in the least. But with the disappearance of the Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows, the might of the Temple of Shadows had waned for the last few thousand years. However, its former status was still entrenched in many hearts. Just as everyone was discussing the matter, a slender figure slowly walked through the moonlight and appeared before them. A breathtakingly beautiful young girl stood in the glow of the moonlight. She walked over gracefully with an elusive smile on her face. Her slightly lifted eyes were more beautiful than the moon. Dozens of undead followed the young girl closely. A hush instantly fell over the entire courtyard. Those who thought the guards had announced the wrong name now stared at the surpassingly beautiful girl. She was so aloof and so beautiful, under the mingled light from the moon and the lamps, her flawless face looked unreal. Everyone looked at the young girl as she stepped forward. Many secretly gulped. One must know that the Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows was the most powerful symbol of the Temple of Shadows. She was the one who previously led the Temple of Shadows to its peak. But the Holy Lord had vanished for a long time, and everyone thought that she was never coming back. But it turned out that, they were now seeing her in the flesh. When Lan Yu, who was standing nearby, saw the young girl, his eyes were filled with astonishment. The beautiful women in his memories were swiftly overlaid by the present. Burp, am I really drunk? Why do I seem to see the Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows? Michio burped drunkenly as he squinted at the figure, his brow wrinkled in bewilderment. I must be really drunk. Yi Qingtang slowly walked through the courtyard under everyone's shocked gaze. A small smile lurked in the corner of her mouth. Her amused eyes were aloof as she swept a casual gaze over everyone's face. That's right, that's what the Holy Lord of the Temple of Shadows should look like. Yi Qingtang inwardly noted everyone's reaction. She only heaved a secret sigh of relief when she peeked at those near her from the corner of her eye and saw that their expressions were normal. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.